Okay. Right. We're on. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee on a very hot evening. We just asked that the air conditioning be put back on, so hopefully that will kick in a minute. We do, for the first time since COVID started, have members of the public this evening as well, so particularly welcome to have people here in person to speak with us. So can we agree the minutes on the last meeting? Agreed, thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Emberson.
Chair, I will be abstaining on the item relating to Wensley Road. As lead councillor for housing, sorry.
And Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. I will be claiming an interest in the Prospect Park. I guess that's item 21 this evening, but I will be speaking.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, just to clarify the reason for the...
Yes, apologies. I realized I hadn't said that. Lead member for recreation.
Councillor Cornell.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a personal interest. It doesn't affect my position on the committee, but my nephew is a member of the Reading Golf Club.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Stanford-Beale.
Thank you. Item 21 on Prospect Park. It's my role as CEO at Autism Berkshire. I've been involved with the playground design group. So we've been looking at various different designs. So therefore I'm declaring interest. I will speak, but I won't vote.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We then get on to questions, and we have one question this evening from Councillor Josh Williams. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. When a new planning application is loaded to the council's planning website, residents are invited to submit comments in support or objection, and these are usually displayed for other residents to view, read and consider when making their own comments. These are published online so local residents can see what others are saying and submit their own thoughts. They also give residents the assurance that their views are being seen and heard in the planning process. Back in March, residents contacted me to say they couldn't see their responses to important planning applications loaded online. I contacted council officers and was quickly told it was a technical issue that would be easily resolved. But since then, I've been told the problem is more complicated than that, and planning applications are still waiting for many comments to be loaded and viewed on the council's website. Can the Chair please tell us how many applications have been affected by this issue and what has been done so far, and when residents' comments will again appear on the planning portal? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that question and raising the issue. Many seeking to comment on planning applications do so using the council's website in response to letters or notices seen inviting comments in support or objections. These comments are then usually made available for other residents and the applicant to view, read and consider on the website. However, this does not happen instantly, unlike when putting a comment onto Facebook or Twitter. When submitting comments, residents are told in acknowledgement, thank you for your comments. They will be registered and passed on to the case officer, who will take them into account when a decision is made on this proposal. However, because of the large number of comments we receive, planning officers will not normally reply to the points raised. The registration process normally involves verifying that the comments relate to the correct application reference, checking that the correspondent has not provided information about themselves or the applicant that would mean the council would breach data protection guidelines if we were to publish them, and there is case law on this. Checking the comments do not contain offensive or slanderous content, and redacting comments provided to remove any signatures or other personal data, such as an email address. The planning technical support team try to carry out all the relevant checks and redactions so that they can be loaded up on to the public viewing normally within 2 days. However, it can take longer when staff are on leave or when there are significant volumes of comments being submitted. For example, we have one tonight where for the Reading Golf Club application, and that required officers to process 3,000 or so comments received. In addition to this work, the change to IT provider, there is a problem with the necessary software that loads up comments. The workaround is to convert all comments to PDF format, and this takes more time, of course. As for how many applicants have been affected by this issue, officers have checked and it is believed to be about 150. IT services are working on solving the problem, but it will need the system to be upgraded in the meantime. And in the meantime, all new documents and comments are being converted and uploaded as PDFs. Officers are concentrating on doing this with new and current applications as comments come in, and are leaving the processing of comments on older applications until the issue is resolved, unless they receive a specific request, in which case the comments can be converted and re-uploaded directly. The planning manager is also looking to change the acknowledgement message to manage expectations by stating that submitted comments may not be viewable for a number of working days, but to be reassured that the comments will be seen by the case officer and will be taken into account for consideration. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Oh, it's already too hot for this one. First of all, thank you very much for that detailed answer, Chair, and thank you to officers for all their hard work. Have I understood you correctly that officers are leaving comments on older applications until the system has been upgraded? If I've understood that right, when is that upgrade planned to happen?
I'm hoping as soon as possible, and having had this issue raised, certainly will be raising it with officers who are working on this, and I'll get back to you when I've got a proper answer, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. There are no more questions, so we then come on to item 4, which is the potential site visits for the committee, and there was a report in your update pack, and I'll ask Julie Williams just to introduce that.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So the report at page 7 of your update pack is a report explaining what member site visits, why we do them, and normally the processes that we follow. There's a recommendation box there asking you to note the report and confirm that we've only got one site presented to you this time, which is for 35 Bramshaw Road. It's Reading Borough Council application. We're not recommending that this one needs to be site visited, but in future documents you'll see presumably a longer list with our recommendation to you. The report also explains that it's also possible that officers may recommend other sites that should be visited, and indeed it could come up during the course of a committee that a site is requested to be visited, so that's another form of visit that we need to arrange. Member site visits are diaried into your calendars, so then they normally happen on the Thursday before Planning Applications Committee sits. So those are for the accompanied site visits, but because we recognise that a lot of you are busy and working, etc. So we do arrange for where we can, if a site can be seen from the public realm, to do these unaccompanied, but we will provide you with a briefing note to guide your understanding of the application. So with that that explains the report, and also we're recommending that there's no site visits for you to make at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Page.
Chair, could I propose that we site visit the application, blimey, sorry, 17 on the agenda, land at Rosekiln Lane, and that would be an unaccompanied site visit, obviously. Well, not obviously, it doesn't need to be an accompanied site visit. The planning report here is as much a guide, but obviously we would look to the planning officers to provide any further information. But I would propose that a site visit is undertaken in respect of that application and then brought back to our next meeting for determination.
Thank you. Happy to second that, and that does of course mean that the item will be deferred, so that's until the next meeting if the site visit is going to take place in the next cycle. So we'll bring that back to the next meeting. If that's, is everybody happy with that?
No, I just want to say that we just need to check that all the members are in.
Yeah. Everybody happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. And then we go.
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing to add to this report. There's just one appeal listed on there, which is for the public inquiry for 55 Baston Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any comment on any of that? Not seeing anybody, so can we note that report? Thank you. And then we go on to applications for prior approval on page 19.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to this report.
Councillor Page?
Just a quickie, not in respect of any of these items, but on permitted development rights, just to advise the committee that the select committee report to which we gave evidence and Mark Warringham gave oral evidence is published at midnight or 1 minute past midnight tonight. I and Mark have already received an embargoed report, so without breaching its contents, I would say it's worth reading, and I think a good report. So that will be available publicly on the House of Commons website from tomorrow morning, Chair. And perhaps we might want to have a report back at a future committee, not obviously the next one, but one in the future on the recommendations.
Thank you for that. We'll look out for it. Anybody else on that? No, thank you. Can we note that report then, please? And go on to the performance monitoring report on page 25. Thank you, Jude.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to add anything to this report. It's just hopefully a regular item every quarter to let you know how we're doing in the planning team, dealing with plan applications. Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Not seeing anybody, so can we note that report as well, please? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Page.
Just very quickly on page 27 to note the appeals lodged, 7 appeals dismissed, and that we haven't lost any appeals, and I think that's a pretty good record.
Absolutely.
Considering some of those decisions overturned officer recommendation. Oh, sorry.
Absolutely endorse that. Anybody else on that report? No, thank you. We'll note that. Thank you. And then we go on to the 2 reports we do have to take a decision on, street naming. And I hope you've all had the updated list circulated to you, because we did agree some new names to the list, I think back in either December or January. But we have the first one is about the street name for Caversham, but it's in Peppard Ward. Looking at the ward councillors, have you any preferences? So you'd be happy with the Willow? Yeah. Is everybody happy with that? Agreed. Thank you. And then we've got the on item 9, which is the rear of Highgrove Street, which the ward councillors there have both 2 of them have actually committed to a particular name. I don't know if Councillor Challenger, you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we'd like to go with Highgrove Mews. As a former resident of Highgrove Street, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to living on a mews, so it also fits with the area quite nicely. So we'd like to move for Highgrove Mews. Are
we all happy with that? Agreed. Oh, I'll second it from the chair. Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much, which then takes us on to the planning applications to be considered. I'd just like to let people know that because we have public speakers here tonight, which is very welcome, we are going to take the public speaking items first. And the first one of those will be item 11 on page 55, which is the Bristol and West Arcade. And then after that, we will take the report item 20, which is the Reading Golf Club, Kidmore End Road. So if that's okay, I believe we have case officer to just introduce, and then we've got public speaking.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This item relates to the former Bristol and West Arcade, 173 to 175 Friar Street, and also includes numbers 27 to 32 Marketplace. There's 2 applications for consideration before you today. An application for an application for a full planning permission and an associated application for listed building consent. Both applications are considered together in their main agenda report on page 55, and there is also an update report for this item on page 11 of the update pack. I have nothing further to add at this stage, Chair, beyond that set out in both those reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I invite first public speaker, who's Evelyn Williams, to come and speak to us. And you have got 5 minutes, as I think you probably know. And Nikki's going to wave something at me if it looks like you go over the 5 minutes. I'm sure you won't. Thank you. When you're ready. Would you like to introduce yourself and say why you're here? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Evelyn Williams from the Reading Conservation Area Advisory Committee. Reading CAC has serious concerns about this proposal and asks that the committee reject it in its current state, even with the amended plans, and require improvements to be made. The Bristol and West Arcade impacts the setting of some of Reading's most significant heritage buildings. 27 to 32 Marketplace are listed buildings, and facing the arcade on Town Hall Square are some of Reading's most important listed civic buildings and monuments: the Town Hall and Museum, St Lawrence's Church and Queen Victoria's statue. A large part of the site is also within the Marketplace London Street conservation area. It is clear that the conservation and refurbishment of the listed buildings on Marketplace is long overdue, but there seems to be no reason why necessary repairs and refurbishment cannot be carried out now. They should not be linked to the approval of this application. I would like to highlight 5 matters of particular concern with the proposed redevelopment. Firstly, the enlarged entrance to Town Hall Square is visually dominant and distracting when it should fit in with the scale of the surrounding more modest buildings and appear subservient to them. This is particularly so when viewed from Town Hall Square and approaching from the Forbury. The acceptability of the loss of 175 Friar Street, a building of townscape merit, should be reconsidered in the light of the overwhelming monolithic facade. Thirdly, the entrance to Cooper's is to be removed and replaced by 2 doors leading to a new retail unit. The 2 doors do not sit well in the listed facade to Marketplace. We are aware that the existing, much loved and recognised doorway is not original. However, the applicant should not discard the affection that Reading people have for it with a modern door that is equally out of keeping. In the case of 32 Marketplace, we feel that there would be considerable merit in using this opportunity to improve the modern shop front and doorways, and that the current proposal is not acceptable. Finally, our reading of the application is that the canopy of the front of the hotel will remain open at all times. The crime prevention measures to enable this are set out in paragraph 9.3, and we question whether some of these measures are acceptable, desirable, or, should circumstances dictate, enforceable. We recommend that alternatives are considered. The reality we fear is that at some point it will prove necessary to gate the front entrance, and undesirable as this is, it would be better if provision for this were built in at the outset. Please reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has any member got a question they would like to put to Ms. Williams? Josh Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us. One of the things you said was that the proposed large entrance oblong, if you like, should really appear subservient to nearby buildings. Could you tell me why? Why should it?
Whatever goes on this site should be subservient to the listed buildings, the Marketplace, on Town Hall Square. We have a beautiful town hall and museum that was saved in the 1970s, and we have now learned to love again, was at risk itself at that time. And if you have something that is big and white like this, it will just, I fear it will leap out at you. You won't see the buildings of the town hall and museum. Now, there are ways in which you could have a modern frontage, and indeed the previously consented application was a lot better than this because the facade was more broken up. The entranceway was not as big as we currently have now. And so, although maybe I wasn't entirely happy with the previous consented application, we did not comment on that. What we have now is much too big, glaring, not sufficiently broken up, and it's just a flat white wall. If I can continue, we also have concerns about how well that material will actually wear, but I'm sure that would be conditioned in any case if approval were to be given. Thank you.
Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming and speaking this evening. I have two quick questions, hopefully. Could you just repeat and/or expound on your issues in regards to 32 Marketplace, because I didn't entirely get that? And number two, would you or do you have an opinion about the courtyard that will be behind the listed buildings if this were built to the plans that are currently here? Thank you.
Okay, on number 32, this is the building that was formerly a bank. And as you can see, I expect there is a picture somewhere. It is quite a utilitarian modern facade at ground level. And it would be really good if that were to be improved and not just adapted for use as residential, which is what seems to be the current proposal. I think that ground floor shopfront, as it were, should be improved to make this a very nice block of 3 listed buildings, rather than just to do the minimum to adapt to residential. In terms of the courtyard behind, yeah, we are slightly worried about this because we've looked at the demolition plans and we can see that a lot of fabric is going. We're quite worried about the thoroughfare through the courtyard. It just seems to be a place that people will walk through, perhaps sit down to have a drink or eat in the restaurant, but it doesn't feel a very nice open space at all. And it could do with opening up a little more from what is currently presented.
I'm not seeing anybody else indicating they have a question. So thank you very much for coming. And we've now got the applicant online, I believe. Is that right, Simon? Or Nikki?
Yes, Chair, that the applicant will be able to unmute their own microphone. We can't unmute them, so they need to unmute themselves and then they can speak. Nick, are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself? Yes, I called them in earlier. Still on there according to the list of people. Unfortunately, we can't unmute them. It's a strange system in Teams. They have to unmute themselves.
This is unfortunate, isn't it? Is there a number? Oh, presumably he's dialing in on the number you would phone him on. So
yes, he's connected on that number. Could try texting him, couldn't I?
You could try texting him, yeah. I mean, I had hoped he would have been listening to Evelyn Williams, because he would want to hear presumably what Objectors were saying as well, but maybe he's got a technical problem.
No, I'll try ringing him again then. Yeah, I'll try ringing him again. Hang on. I've got it here. Hang on.
Technology is wonderful, isn't it?
I'm calling him back in.
Have we had this happen before?
Nick, have you got back in? Are you able to unmute yourself? He seems to be in the meeting, but doesn't seem to be able to unmute, I presume.
Wendy, I'm just asking you, what happens if we can't get through in a timely fashion? Do we need to defer and try again next month? Because clearly, obviously, there was some, I believe members certainly have got some questions they wanted to ask.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously, he has a right to present something to members and so that you have all the information.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not only in the report, but in any representations made. I'm sorry, but the person you.
And I say, yeah, but I'm sure members on this application, which is a really important one, will have some questions for him as well. So.
Yeah, yeah.
But if he's listening, I would have suggested he should have come down here in any case.
I think he did say he'd had a potential COVID contact. That was why he was phoned.
It's not working. You take
Yeah, it worked
over.
earlier.
Deal with other applications? I don't know. No, that's true. It's not.
Yes.
Hi, Nick. It's Nikki Simpson phoning you from my own phone from the council chamber. So if I put you
to unmute myself, but I couldn't. So can you do that?
no, we can't, unfortunately. The really stupid thing is we can't unmute you from our end, which is very odd. But I've got my phone. I'll just put it next to the microphone here so that you can speak on the microphone here.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Can you hear me?
Say something.
Can you hear me? All right.
Oh, sorry, can people in the public area hear? You can. Okay, well, we'll give it a go. It's right. Well, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm sorry, I'm Jo Lovelock, chair of the committee. Would you like to introduce yourself, and then I hope you managed to hear what Evelyn Williams had to say, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak, and then there'll be questions possibly after that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Nick Delobenier, and I am the planning consultant who's been involved in this project. There are three things that I'd like to address. One is just a brief background to the planning application. Secondly, to deal with the objections that have been raised. And thirdly, to deal with the planning benefits, which I think this scheme brings. So just by way of background, this has obviously been a very long disused and vacant site for more than 10 years. It's been subject to 2 planning consents, and despite a strong property market over that period, no development has come forwards. In 2019, the consent was extensively marketed, and again, there was no interest shown other than from hotel operators. And there now is a real opportunity with a hotel operator in train to build a 4-star hotel to regenerate this site. I think it's even more important given the problems that town centres are facing and the need to bolster retail and find uses that you bring into a town centre which will help to regenerate it. And this is what the hotel will do. It's estimated there will be 3.9 million extra spend in the local area per annum. And the benefit of the hotel is it also helps to unlock sufficient value to restore and reuse the listed buildings. I turn now to the objections. For a scheme of this sort, we've done considerable public consultation, but I would say that the level of objection is extremely limited. There's been one letter objection from residents and one from the Conservation Area Advisory Committee. There's no objection on land use, amenity, transport, sustainability, etc. So dealing with the objections that have been made, firstly, the demolition of 175 Borough Street. This has already been consented in the 2019 scheme. It was considered acceptable by Historic England and the design officer. And on any account, this can't be considered as a good piece of architecture, a post-war neo-Georgian building. Its retention, furthermore, would completely frustrate the scheme. Secondly, dealing with the size of the entrance, we would have liked to push the building forwards, but it's simply impossible to do so because services run under the pavement and therefore it's been necessary to move the ground floor back and to create enough vertical and horizontal clearance for maintenance and access. Having said that, the hotel does need a prominent entrance, and one of the huge benefits we think of this, which has been carefully designed and discussed with planning officers, is it will attract people into the arcade and create an interesting and attractive new urban space. So we think it's a positive, not a negative. In terms of the elevation composition, we believe it's good quality. This scheme uses much less glass, has a more traditional solid to void pattern than the previous scheme, and has a hierarchy of windows within it. The materials are good materials, and I doubt this, they will be subject to a condition, but they're using brick and stone, all of which will age well. In relation to the door surround that's been mentioned to the pub, that is not original. Its removal consented in 2019. We are, however, if there was real concern about double doors into the pub, then we could look at a single door, but actually there are double doors there already at the moment. In relation to security, we've worked with Secure by Design, and there's an operational management plan, and the arcade will be gated at night. So turning then to the public benefits, which have to be weighed if there is any harm with the scheme. Firstly, it regenerates the site and an area which has been derelict for 10 years. Secondly, it brings a high quality hotel right into the heart of the town centre with extra spend of 3.9 million per annum. Fourthly, it will create 100 new jobs, both operationally and a further 100 for the construction. Fifthly, it will create 8 new residential units. Next, it will provide 2 new retail units and a public house, cross-funded by the hotel. It will also provide a new public route, policy compliant affordable housing, and we believe good buildings and design and architecture. So there is a real opportunity now, after so many years, to actually see this site regenerated and brought back into use. Previously, all developments have been speculative, but now with a hotel operator on board, it is no longer speculative, and our clients wish to proceed with the development as soon as possible.
Thank you. I think there may be well, I know there's some questions now. If you're happy to stay on the line, Councillor Page, you were indicating.
Yes, can I draw your attention to paragraph 6.40 in our report, where we were told in the report that a report evidencing the works would be provided. This is to 27 to 32 Marketplace. The applicant has advised the report evidencing the works that have been carried out will be provided to officers and members prior to the committee meeting. We're now told in the update report that this hasn't been forthcoming as a result of a period of wet weather. If you pardon this cynicism, this sounds like yet another excuse for not fulfilling urgent and long overdue works to the listed building. Can you update on when the works identified in paragraph 641 and in our update report will be completed in total?
Yes, I think the question related to the current works that are being undertaken to the list of buildings as a sort of the phase 1 works. Most of those have now been completed. There are some further works that are due to be completed within the next 6 weeks. They include things such as repainting the front facade. There's one valley gutter still to be cleared, and repairing some of the render. There will be a full report produced at that stage, but they have worked very hard since the first committee meeting on site, including, clearing the site, replacing all the missing tiles on the roofs, overhauling the whole roof, removing and reinforcing all the floors where there are potential issues with safety, repairing the windows, and the building is now wind and watertight. And 2 of the members did come around last week to have a look at the progress that's been made.
Yeah.
Can I just come back on that? I'm grateful for that update. Obviously, we'd welcome the full written update as soon as possible. You will recollect from the first site visit, I think you were on that, the one where we had to wait an hour before we got into the building. Some of us made clear that we expected all the works to be completed before any other works commenced on site. I take it you would not therefore have an objection if we proposed a tightening of the conditions that required all the works to 2732 Marketplace identified in the report and the update to be completed before any further demolition or construction works take place on the rest of the site.
I'm not sure I got all of that, but I understand the question was, would we object to a condition on the timing of the further works? Is that correct?
Basically,
I mean,
yeah.
the additional works will include demolition of the rear and reinstatement, and that cannot be carried out in any practical way without carrying out works of demolition to the hotel, where the hotel part of the site is. So some of the works that we're looking at are completely dependent, and the other matter is that this hotel operator will walk away if they cannot start the development within a reasonable time of the planning consent being granted. Because if one just carried out all the listed building works, by the time they were carried out, the hotel operator would disappear. So it's not only there's some practical issues. There are clearly other work that could be carried out, but there cannot be a condition that would make this whole project work, which requires the whole of the Marketplace scheme to be brought forwards in advance of the hotel.
That isn't quite what I was saying. I was talking about the essential works, not the occupation of the building. But that's something obviously we can discuss. But I think you would understand from the comments that a number of us made at the site meeting, the first site meeting, that the continued neglect of that building is not acceptable. Now, you've clearly started works, and I appreciate that and welcome it. But what we cannot afford to see is those paused in the way they seem to have been paused because of the excuse of a bit of wet weather. And it is therefore imperative that those works are completed as soon as possible. It's in your interest and it's in our interest.
Yes, I mean, the works that are being carried out will make the buildings, wind and watertight. They are already, but there's some further works to do that, including the repainting of the front. So that's one batch of works, and then the next batch of works, which in a practical sense also require the hotel to begin to carry out the works of demolition and restoring the rear facade. That's the next sort of batch of works that would need to be done. But obviously the hotel works have to commence in order to allow those works to be carried out. And the Section 106 secures this by you can't actually open the hotel until all those works are finished and all the works at the rear of the buildings are completed and the public realm space is provided. So that there are controls in which we're happy to sign up to in the section 106 to secure that.
Okay, I've also got Councillor Rowland wanting to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for appearing on the telephone over here. Appreciated very much. Yes, I was able to go to the first site visit and the second site visit last week, and I have noticed that works have begun and was somewhat encouraged by the level of engagement with the people on site to continue those works and to progress them, and the level of knowledge of which they had. But my question comes more when you were introducing your compelling reasons for the application here was, and I quote, that you are creating with the courtyard and the pathway through, which is again also very welcome too, because that's been a long time that has not been in existence. But you said you are creating an interesting and attractive urban space with that courtyard and that way through. Now, my question would be in the fact that to the east of the site there, you've got the listed buildings, and listed buildings of that age and import are frequently just as interesting on the back as they are on the front. And you've got a courtyard that will respond to the backs of those buildings, but you've also made provision for a great number of bin stores, cycle stores in that courtyard area. And I'm rather curious as to how that spells an interesting and attractive urban space that's going to properly engage with the listed buildings that the people in this town care about very much. So if you could address that in relationship to your hotel and also that courtyard and the listed buildings, the rear of them. Thank you.
I do apologise. I didn't get a lot of that. I know the question revolves around the arcade, the space that we're creating with the new arcade arrangement. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you could.
Yeah, can I just also say that how that would work with a lot of bin stores and cycle stores was at the heart of the question.
Yes, I'm sorry. I do apologise for the technical issues. I mean, we think this space is a really good space. Arcades often are spaces that people walk through and pass through, but by creating a space, a terrace outside the hotel, and opening up the area to the rear of the listed buildings, we think, and I think there's an image in the information that was sent to members, we think this could be a really attractive place for people to stop, have a drink, have a chat, sit and enjoy the landscape, enjoy the back of the listed buildings, which will be restored. And it's a big enough space to let good light in, and it's shielded from traffic noise and the other hubbub of the town centre. So we think it's got something which is special and isn't current something that there's currently in the town in the same way. And we have animated the side of the hotel, so it has at the top of it has the bar and the restaurant, and then you've got the terrace, and you've got the hotel entrance, and then the leisure facility. And those are all glazed areas, but they have a kind of rhythm along the street. It's not just one elevator, one uninterrupted elevation. It's split up. And we think that the residents in the new buildings will also enjoy the fact that it's been opened up and given more breathing space. So we believe that it's a really good part of the scheme and is a very strong positive element. And certainly when we were doing the public consultation, there was a very positive view about it. And of course, it does need to be managed. There are controls on the hours of use, and there are security measures put in relation to the gating it at either end and at night time, so there's no antisocial behaviour happening there.
Nick, can I just interrupt? I don't know if it's you couldn't hear because of the.
Oh, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Rowland was asking about the bin and cycle stores and how that could fit into being an interesting and attractive place to and engaging with the listed building. So that was the nub of her concern.
The danger of catching it to what I thought I heard. Well, obviously one's got to have those facilities, and they need to be carefully designed, subject to a condition to ensure that visually they can be integrated insofar as you can. I think most of the cycles parking is actually within the building, from recollection. And there are 3 places within the building where cycle provision is provided. And the refuse collection also is largely contained within the building. With a hotel, you can have quite modern facilities to store waste, crush waste, and limit the amount of refuse that comes out of a hotel. So all those things will be put in place.
Councillor Rowland, do you want to follow that up?
Thank you for that. Yes, the cycle, I suppose it is maybe a little bit hard to read, could be considered to be within the building section, but still we've got bin stores out there. I was just wondering if there's probably an issue with having those along the, I guess that southern route exit out into the market square, but, I have a concern if that's going to be a fully integrated quarter, how people are going to be sitting there and relaxing with bins all around and how that's going to be accessed. So could you just explain one other thing then to me, is just what is the relationship to the hotel or with the hotel and the retail units? Is there any co-ownership? How would the courtyard really be managed between those retail units and the hotel? What's the level of business cooperation, I guess, in dealing with that courtyard?
Could you hear that better, Nick? Was that better?
I'm afraid I didn't. If you could just summarise it, because that was very helpful when you did that last time.
Sorry, I was trying to work the thing. Let me just take the camera, the phone, so that Councillor Rowland can speak to you direct.
Right, this is a bit odd. Hi. Yes, I was understanding and agreed your point about the cycle storage, but the bin storage, I was wondering if that could go down on the south route that goes out to Marketplace, if there was flexibility around that bin storage. And then secondly, what I wanted to understand was the business cooperation between the hotel and the retail units in terms of their relationship in dealing with the courtyard. Is that a cooperative kind of relationship? Is it they don't know one from another, or how is that envisioned to work?
The refuse exiting in the route you suggested, albeit we have had obviously quite extensive discussions with the planning officers about regime they're comfortable with, but I have to give that further thought. In terms of the retail, we would hope that the courtyard that we're creating, if you like, on the sort of marketplace side, was if it's acceptable in terms and amenity terms, we would like to have access, if it's possible, and some seating outside for the people as well. But I think those are things that we'll have to explore, integrated as much.
So is the cooperation? Are they separate? Separate entities? a hotel, a retail unit, a retail unit, a retail unit that don't really have any sense of cooperation or ownership? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, they would be different. Obviously, the retailer would not be part of the hotel, but I think, you know, hotel guests will spend money in shops, and they will be sitting in the terrace, on the terrace, and enjoying that space. And so I would hope that the shops will benefit significantly from having the hotel, the presence of the hotel, the 182 bedroom hotel, close by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anybody else wanting to ask any questions. So thank you very much for, and in particular, thanks to Nikki Simpson for her creativity and probably a first in the country, I expect, Nikki. Well done. Thank you. Right. So now we go on to comments from
Nikki,
members.
do you want to watch online now rather than me holding my phone?
I must apologise again. I mean, it was working when we started on this.
It was.
Somehow my phone failed me, so apologies, and I hope that I've been able to address the questions that the members wanted to.
Okay, we'll let you watch online now, so you can. We're 30 seconds behind, but you'll be able to watch then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, any members of the committee, have you any comments that you or questions of officers that you wanted to raise? Councillor Rowland. No, okay, I'm just. Councillor Rowland.
Well,
sorry, you didn't put your hand up, sorry.
Yes. Councillor Page has a case of the shies this evening, I guess, so I'll go ahead and, well, okay. I'll go ahead and start off. This obviously is an application in Abbey Ward, so we've obviously had quite a level of interest in it, and it is overall to be finally welcomed. I'm sure that Councillor Page will probably go on about the history of the site and the challenges, but the concerns that I have outside of welcoming the many benefits that this will bring, or reopening up the pathway through from Friar Street on out into Marketplace, and those situations. The concern that I have is that we have got the 3 listed buildings that are attached to the site. We've got a list of conditions, or actually the building out of those sites in large part that were already from a prior application, which will be going forward. But on some level, you know, this town is extremely fond of those buildings. There are a number of them from the early 1600s, and possibly many people have been drinking there since the early 1600s with Cooper's Arms. It is a lovely place. It has got a Jacobean fireplace, Jacobean door in it. And it's something that residents I know are very fond of, wanting to see restored. My concern has been in paying proper respect to those. I understand that the hotel is very desirable, certainly for the developers to get in there. But in some ways, this has kind of been, I've felt like, you know, a stepchild to the larger aim of getting this hotel up and running. And for Reading's residents and people that are passionate about the heritage of the town center there, this is no stepchild. This is something that has been wanted to see coming forward for very many years. So my concerns that I question the developer about in terms of the courtyard still stand. I don't know exactly how that's going to be engineered. I do understand, though, that definitely there will have to be a demolition of part of those buildings that were from that earlier planning, simply because the fact that they are attached to those buildings at this time, and that will open up the courtyard. So I appreciate that. But just last month, we all saw a heritage regeneration site just over on Queen Victoria Street that promises to be quite interesting. And the whole idea of heritage regeneration is very, very key. So I do hope that the developer will take this very, very seriously. I suppose we can probably have a little bit more of a conversation about the conditions and whether we can ensure that those buildings will properly be taken care of before the hotel is occupied. Certainly, I would dare to say. As far as the other situations that the CAC had put forward in concern to the heritage out on towards the town hall, and then also with the facades at 32 Marketplace and the Coopers, those are actually very, very important concerns. I hopefully those can be addressed as the buildings are built out. But I don't think that we are in a position where we can turn this down. I think it's certainly something that we want to welcome as far as regeneration is, and looking again at the Friar Street frontage and its view onto the town hall. I had a good look at it again this afternoon, and I think there are elements of that, despite the double height entranceway, which is actually unavoidable, that actually will work better than I initially thought with the window fenestration and the breakup of the materials. So I do think that they have looked at that element, and my concern again will be for the listed buildings and the way those are dealt with in the courtyard. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Page.
Chair, I would hope that we welcome what I think is a very exciting scheme and represents, I think, a vote of confidence in Reading, soon to be hopefully city centre. There are not many towns and cities where hotel groups are looking at bringing forward the sort of size and quality of hotel that is proposed here, and I welcome that. Whilst I agreed with the opening point that Evelyn Williams made, and that was one of the issues that I probed the applicant on, I'm afraid I didn't really agree with much of the other comments on behalf of the CAC, which are much more subjective. The worst thing you can have in a conservation area in a town or city centre is dereliction, and it's long-term dereliction that we have seen here, not just of the Coopers, but also, of course, the closed arcade and that wide shop frontage there that you can see in the upper photo that has no benefit to anyone. And I welcome the very helpful summary note that the applicant circulated by post and email. I like the design. I think it combines a freshness and it invites people in. There may be some issue about the height of the hotel if you were seen from certain points, but from the vast majority of ground floor views, ground level, views around there, you'll hardly see the hotel, and your attention and trade will hopefully be drawn to the hotel. The very welcome courtyard, I think that's a feature that will be extremely appealing and complementary to the centre. The reopening of that long arcade, I think 1893 is the original date, something that we have been keen as a local authority to maintain. And you, Chair, will probably remember when we've had in the past discussions with Sainsbury's when they opened their Friar Street office shop. That was a very important part, and indeed there is a right of way through there. It's now not being used for obvious reasons, but that will be re-established, and I think the footfall should be much greater than has been before, and it will benefit existing as well as future uses. So I think the overall benefits are very substantial. The affordable housing elements as well, both on-site and off-site, and the wider economic benefits. In terms, just finishing off on Marketplace and the listed buildings, I would ask Julie whether there's any, Julie Williams, whether there's any further tightening to be done around the condition, because at the moment, as I read the condition that's proposed, it is related, or completion of those essential works is still linked to works on the new hotel. Which could, of course, be some years away. Without questioning the intentions of the current owners, with respect, some of us have been around so long, we have seen a succession of promises that haven't been delivered on this site from previous owners. I hope that won't be the case here, but we cannot afford to be held to ransom in terms of the works being done to Marketplace being linked to what might not happen behind there. And that is the point I'm driving at. And I don't think the either there was a misunderstanding. There are essential works to be done to Marketplace that can and should be done and don't require the works to the new hotel. And it is ensuring that those are done before anything else happens. Now, on the basis of what we've heard indicated, they're well on the way to doing that. But what we don't want is their sudden pause and then hotel works start and the completion of Marketplace and the essential works is delayed for yet 2 or 3 more years. And that was the point that we made at the first site visit. So whilst you call on any other speakers, Chair, I'm wondering whether we could look for some form of tightening around that condition. Other than that, I'm more than happy to support the rest of the report and the recommendations, Chair, because, and I suppose just referencing the very final point that's made in this report about the Section 106 agreement, and that in itself will could take some time, but the bottom of 102, page 102, talks about work to bring back the Marketplace listed buildings back into viable use within an agreed time frame. Well, we don't have that, because if it's linked to new works that may not start for 2 or 3 years, that's not an agreed time frame. And that's the point that Evelyn Williams made right at the start, one I think we all agree with, and it's how we tighten that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Josh Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I give you some time to think about that one? I mean, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think for what it's worth, and it's not worth a great deal, but my opinion is that the proposed views that we see in front of us are a considerable improvement on the already consented scheme. I think it's better. I understand that large mouth opening makes a statement, and it's a statement I quite like. I think it looks rather European. I think it looks open and welcoming, and I think that's exactly what Reading embodies. My concern, though, is this sort of floating column that may or may not be there and can be removable, which is mentioned throughout the report. But there's a condition that prior to commencement of development, there'll be approval of the details of an additional entrance column to the Friar Street frontage. Now, I think that could change that open frontage entirely, depending on what that column is. So I don't know, I ask for your advice, Chair, and others. Maybe that could come back through, not through this committee, perhaps, that's maybe too much. Could that come back through ward councillors so that this committee knows that these two guys are on it? Because they will be, they won't let anything through that looks wrong. But we haven't seen this random thing, this column that's just to be added in. And it's not even going to be the same material as that frontage, according to the report. So I'm not happy about that column we haven't seen. And I wonder whether it could have a little more scrutiny. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Emberson.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd come in because at the site visit that Councillor Rowland and I attended, they did show us a picture of this column, and albeit they should have put it in the pack for information. From it was, you know, it was quick viewing because we were also going around the whole premises. But from my point of view, it effectively, you know, the pictures you see there just effectively brings in an additional column in the middle, and it is quite respectful in terms of how it looks. And I thought aesthetically it was okay, but I do agree with your comments, but I thought I'd just throw that in there.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take an opposing view on this and agree with our friend from Reading CAG. I know, you know, it's great to regenerate this particular part, but really in terms of design, I would like to have seen something more sympathetic to the other buildings in this particular area. I do feel that when you look at that picture on the left-hand side there, yes, it looks really good, it looks really smart, but it's not in the context of the historic elements around it. And I feel like it would take away, you know, the impression from that particular part of Reading, which is, you know, it's something we should be proud of. But I'm just thinking about the sympathetic design with what else is there. So for me, it's I'm not gonna be able to support this based on that. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. So can I ask Julie Williams to comment particularly on the issue about the timing of the works to the listed building, but also that the suggestion that we consult ward councillors about the column. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping to ask the agent about whether they had a contractor on board already for the rest of the build, because I know they've got specialists working in the listed buildings at the moment, but I didn't want to prolong the agony, but you know, by the time we got to there, I thought I'd let that go. But what I was going to suggest is that in your recommendation, as part of the Section 106 agreement, we have item 5, and this is the one that has that trigger in that saying complete the works before occupation of the hotel. I'll be suggesting that we amend that item to change the trigger to be informed by the build programme to ensure that the essential works to the listed building are completed in good time. And this is a problem because we would need to negotiate with the builders to find out how they're actually going to be building out the scheme, to make sure it needs to be practical, and it needs to, you know, we don't want to make it unviable for the developer to complete. And then I think the provision of the public realm and landscaping, that could be before occupation of the hotel, obviously, because there's no point doing public realm works if you've still got building works going on. So I would ask if members could agree that we amend item 5 to allow that heads of or the terms in the Section 106 to include them providing us with their schedule of works, etc. So we can agree a timely trigger, but one that's practical as well.
Where would you Well, I'll ask if people are happy with that in a minute. But where would you suggest we put in the bit about the consultation with ward councillors on the?
That would be in the planning conditions part. So where you have, I think it's in amongst the material. Maybe Matt will come in on the materials. We don't normally put in the condition that it's in consultation with members, but we put it in as an informative. That this is how we will go about dealing with the application.
Okay, right. I'm not seeing anybody else, so can we move to a vote on this, please? And obviously we're going to have to take a vote because we know that at least one person is voting differently from other members who've spoken. So all those in favour of the recommendation with the amended conditions that we've talked about? And all those against? And are there any abstentions? No. So that is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Nikki, again for rescuing us from a difficult situation, which then takes us on to the application on the golf club on item 20 on page 297. And Susanna Bedford, I believe, is going to introduce the report, and then we have a very complicated set of people to speak. I don't mean the people are complicated. I mean, there's a lot of people wanting to speak, and I'll explain that after we've heard from Susanna. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There is an update on this item on page 19 of your update pack, which amends the wording of reason for refusal 1, and a further reason for refusal is added in relation to insufficient justification of the energy efficiency measures proposed. There are also statements from interested parties. The proposal seeks outline planning permission at the Reading Golf Club site for the demolition of the existing clubhouse and the erection of up to 257 residential units. The development incorporates a new road network accessed from Kidmore End Road, a health care facility building, public open space and landscaping to include replacement tree planting on site. Matters of access, landscaping, layout and scale are for consideration at this time, with appearance to be considered at a reserved matter stage if an outline application is approved. The scheme is predominantly residential with mainly single unit dwellings. There are some flatted units in the centre of the site and above the proposed healthcare centre, which is sited towards the Kidmore End Road frontage. The dwelling mix proposed is in excess of 50% of the dwellings as family sized, so 3 and 4 bed units, and the proposal also offers 35% as affordable housing. Both the number of larger houses and the percentage of affordable housing proposed exceed what is required to comply with the relevant local plan policies in relation to these matters. The application site is wholly within Reading Borough. However, the applicant's land ownership and the former playing course span the administrative boundary with South Oxfordshire District Council. However, this boundary is not physically delineated. The application submission also includes proposals for this land within South Oxfordshire to create a new area of publicly accessible country park, woodland proposed to be created by the planting of over approximately 1,000 trees and possible allotments. It is noted that 3.7 hectares of the approximately 12 hectare application site is allocated within the adopted local plan at policy CA1B for residential development and a replacement clubhouse, subject to the future provision of golf on the remainder of the site, which fulfills an important sports and leisure function for Reading. Reading Golf Club is no longer operating at the application site, with facilities now provided at Caversham Heath Golf Club. Therefore, the current scheme is considered in relation to other relevant policies within the local plan. The entirety of the application site forms a significant area of undesignated open space, where local plan policy EN8 sets out that development should not result in the loss of undesignated open space. This policy provides criteria to be met for development to be permitted. The applicant has submitted documentation in relation to this policy consideration, including a legal mechanism to secure off-site improvements. However, as set out in the main report, although proposals for improvements to recreational facilities on remaining open space are proposed, these are within South Oxfordshire District. Officers remain unsatisfied that it has been demonstrated that these off-site works and space can be delivered, and therefore it is a failure to demonstrate compliance with policy EN8, which forms the basis for refusal, reason for refusal 1. In relation to the layout and scale of development and landscaping within the site, officers have concluded that the proposed layout and indicative dwelling design has failed to demonstrate how the development can bring forward a community of high quality buildings and attractive places to make best use of the landscape character and potential of the site. Officers have also concluded that proposed layout with the road and a number of dwellings located close to or directly adjacent to the boundary of the site adjoining South Oxfordshire would fail to respond positively to this context or maintain or enhance the character and appearance of the adjoining open landscape. The scheme additionally has failed to provide sufficient biodiversity and energy efficient measures. This harm has been weighed very carefully with the benefits of the proposals, in particular the provision of family homes with an affordable housing offer of 35% and a number of other infrastructure improvements which can be secured via Section 106 legal agreement. This is a considerable planning benefit when set in the context of the need for housing and affordable housing within Reading Borough. However, The proposal would result in the loss of a significant amount of undesignated open space and resultant biodiversity, where the proposed scheme is not considered to provide a high quality development with green infrastructure and landscaping to respond positively to this local context, or maintain or enhance the character and appearance of the adjacent open landscape. Therefore, on this basis, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I thought I'd explain the speaking after Susanna had introduced this item, and we have got objectors, and I believe we've got Claire Grasshoff, Helen Lambert and Steve Harcourt here. And we have a very strict rule that we have to share the time out between objectors, people who are in support of the application, and then also the applicant. So we've agreed that we'll have 6 minutes between the three of you for objections. And then I believe we have Richard Stainthorpe and Stephen Lee, who are here to speak in favour of the application. Are they here?
Richard Leon's on the phone. Richard Leon's on the phone.
Oh, one's on the phone, I beg your pardon. So that means you get 3 minutes each. And then we have the agent, Jonathan Walton, who will get the full 6 minutes to respond to anything that's been said by either objectors or those in support of the scheme. So I hope that's clear, not just to the people who are here to speak, but also to anybody who's watching this. So could we start with Claire Grasshoff for Keep Emma Green? And Nikki is going to time this. So if you all introduce yourselves first, then we'll start the 6 minutes after that, so we don't eat into that for you. So Claire,
thank you, Claire. I'm Claire Grasshoff, and I'm speaking on behalf of the action group Keep Emma Green.
Thank you. And then we have Helen Lambert, yes?
I'm Helen Lambert. I'm the chair of CADRA, the Caversham and District Residents Association, and I'll be speaking third.
Thank you. And finally, Steve Harcourt.
Yeah, I'm Steve Harcourt, the vice chair of Emma Green Residents Association.
Thank you. So when you're ready, nice to see you again, Claire. For people wondering why I said that, it's not long since Mrs. Grasshoff was sat here as Councillor Grasshoff. So yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking for Keep Emma Green, who represent 1,500 members of the community objecting to this development. Our community are deeply upset and angered by this application, which will result in increased traffic, pollution and congestion, a significant decrease in the safety of vulnerable road users on narrow local roads, the loss of a valued heritage landscape and a biodiverse green lung for Reading, and a deeply uncertain future for healthcare provision in the area. Residents feel that the design of the development is inconsistent with its surroundings, and the three-storey building will become a dominant feature in an otherwise low-rise area. And it's also important to bear in mind that the affordable housing will only be affordable relative to market value, which is higher in Emma Green than in other parts of Reading. These are not houses for Reading's most in-need residents. Similar sized houses in the area are selling for well over £400,000. The development also results in the loss of a sporting facility. We argue that there is not an oversupply of local courses, and conversations with current members are highlighting disillusionment and frustration at the new Caversham Club because of the difficulty in booking tee-off times due to the large number of members. This is resulting in people wanting to leave the club, but they're having to look much further afield to find a replacement club. Even the plans around the replacement disc and foot golf facility should be treated with caution. It's important to remember that the club secured the vote to move by promising that if they agreed to sell the whole course for phased development, this could result in a six-figure sum of money for each member. The agreement is therefore in place between the board and the members of the golf club that the whole course is sold, rendering many of the mitigation factors on SODC land presented by the club, including the sports facility, largely irrelevant. The club have recently promised a parcel of land to Reading Borough Council for the use of Emma Green residents, including Cucumber Wood, which is beautiful ancient woodland. It's full of badger setts and is on an extremely steep slope, which renders it largely inaccessible. It's a long way from the nearest access point to the site and has no designated parking. The parcel of land also includes the dry valley at the bottom of the slope, which by its very nature floods during bad weather. This is spare land that the club can't use for development and certainly can't be used recreationally by residents in the way that Clayfield Copse is. Finally, the aforementioned phased development of the whole course was a clear manoeuvre to sidestep the strategic planning process that both RBC and SODC would need to undertake in order to facilitate a cross-border development of this size. This was a conscious decision by the club because they recognised and publicly stated that they would be unlikely to secure approval. This makes a mockery of the local planning process, and this development goes entirely against the CA1B allocation in Reading's local plan. We welcome Mrs Bedford's recommendation to refuse this application and hope that councillors will strongly support her position. Thank you.
Evergreen Residents Association were formed in 1984 to serve the best interest of the local people. In August 2020, once the Reading Golf Club plans had been formally submitted for approval, we surveyed our membership to gauge their feelings about the proposed development, as is our standard practice. As the vast majority of opinions received were against the application, our position was clear and we submitted a structured collective objection. Our residents are concerned about the density of the proposed development. It is both out of character with the surrounding area and also unsustainable in this out of town location. We believe that residents in this location will have to rely on their cars for most of the journeys they will need to undertake. Secondly, congestion is a major problem in North Reading, and as a result, we have poor public transport links and reported illegal pollution levels. This development will only exacerbate the situation. The local infrastructure cannot support this development. We have inadequate roads to support construction and the ensuing residential traffic, and we have a lack of healthcare facilities. We are very concerned about the implications of this site on the climate emergency due to the loss of green space, the loss of biodiversity and loss of mature trees. And finally, the site clearly deviates from the local plan in terms of loss of open space, questionable affordable housing and inadequate build standards. We thank Mrs Bedford for her recommendation to refuse this application and hope that the committee agrees. Thank you.
I'll be brief. It's widely recognised that traffic problems through Caversham are intractable, and this is worsened by cumulative development, and there's more in the pipeline. To quote the draft LTP, bus journey times are unreliable as a result of the congestion, making public transport an unattractive option. Caversham Centre and the Peppard Road Junction suffer congestion, severance and pollution, and the additional pressures cannot be resolved by the MOVA. Causes of the long queues are far more complex. The Kidmore End Road Junction is unsuitable, supporting services already strained. We endorse all the reasons for refusal, but Caversham people see many more. Consultation has focused on the club's problems and disagreement with the local plan, more justification than engagement. Mitigation measures within South Oxfordshire are doubtful. And finally, to quote the design review panel, excessive attention to car ownership at the expense of the natural environment, and how can such a magnificent situation and location provoke more than this bare minimum of responses? We urge the committee to refuse.
Thank you. If you could all remain there in case there are questions from councillors. Are there any questions for our three speakers? Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. This would be a question I suppose that anyone could answer, but I'll particularly, I guess, direct this towards Claire Grasshoff, who was a councillor at the time of the local plan when we passed that in 2019. And I was just kind of wanting to get a sense of people's understanding of the CA1B, which is the part of the local plan that stipulated or suggested that there would be at some future point 90 to 130 dwellings on a site of 3.75 hectares. And I was just wanting, if I could, to get a general understanding of of your viewpoint on that portion of the local plan. Thank you.
Well, as you probably know, Councillor Rowland, that was also one of the most objected to. In fact, I think the most objected to section of the local plan, primarily because it meant that we were going to be losing. Well, the inspector specified that there should remain a golf facility on site, but we knew that by that stage, the golf club had already voted to sell up the whole course for development across both sides. So the community is very well aware of the allocation, but never had any confidence that that allocation would be enough for the golf club, and as was demonstrated by the fact that they did what they did.
Councillor Ennis indicated.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question to any objectors. Do you think anything will be built on this area at all? What's your views on that? About whether there will be some sort of development on the site?
I think it's quite a difficult question to answer, because until you see a plan, you can't really. It's difficult to conjecture whether or not that's going to happen. I personally feel that there is going to be a continual problem with the access to the site, but that is that is a concern shared by most of the residents. But that's down to the planning committee and whether they feel that sufficient mitigation can be taken. But for me, the road is awkward. It's single track. The junction onto Peppard Road is very awkward next to the pub, and that sort of number of houses would make it very, very difficult. And plus also there's inadequate pavements. That road is used by children, vulnerable elderly people going from the local sheltered housing on, I've forgotten what it's called, Lyfield Court and Fisher's Court, down at the bottom of Grove Road, which also has inadequate pavements. There's a church, there's a doctor's surgery, there's a school, 2 schools, and there's a kindergarten, there's a preschool. So, whether or not something is going to be built in the future is up to you, but we will probably continue to fight it because we don't think that it's suitable or sustainable.
Could I answer that as well? Should something in the future come up, a different application, then we'll do the same as we did this time, which is consult the resident members on their opinion and represent them accordingly.
You, Councillor Stamford Beale.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, it is a private golf club and people have said it is private land. But when we visited last week for the site visit, we did note that there were a lot of houses that had gates straight onto the golf club, and there were several houses that actually didn't even have a fence at the back, so they were enjoying the open view of the golf course. In your experience, were there members of the public who are using it as a dog walking facility, or just as open space prior to the club moving out?
Yes, not necessarily members of the public, but certainly over the past, I think, 50 years, people have walked across the course. They have taken their dogs for walks. Certainly the people who have access onto the course have done that. And even, I believe, Councillor Page used to do that with his dog. So yes, people have been doing that. Yeah.
Is there anybody else wanted to ask a question before we move on to people in support? No, thank you very much for coming. And we then move on to supporters. Could we check before we ask Richard Stainthorpe to start whether or not we have also got Stephen Lee on the phone, because I wouldn't want to go through what we went through with the last application. I'm sure Nikki wouldn't either. So
Mr. Lee, are you able to unmute your Microphone by doing *6. It was all working fine earlier. Are you there, Mr. Lee? I need to try phoning him again.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand that. Either that or I'll have to take the whole 6 minutes. I'm not worried.
Hello, Mr. Lee, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Hooray! Oh, I'm such a relief that you've been able to unmute yourself. Excellent.
No,
Thank you.
I've been listening to all the conversations, what's been going on. I thought that you were unmuting me basically. I thought that's so I have been here all the time.
Yeah, that's good. We can't unmute you from this end. Teams doesn't allow us to
sorry,
unmute you, only mute you, unfortunately. So you have to do *6 to unmute yourself. So
right, okay.
But it's good that you've been able to unmute yourself.
I've been here all the time. So
excellent, good. I'll let the chair speak to you.
Okay, thank you. Could we have introductions from both of you then, and then the 6 minutes won't need to be interrupted. Richard Stainthorpe first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Richard Stainthorpe. I'm a resident of Peppard Ward, or what will next year be Emma Green Ward.
Thank you. And Stephen Lee on the phone.
Yes, good evening. Would you like me to go first?
Just say who you are, really, then we've got a record.
Sorry. Okay, my name's Stephen Lee.
Thank you. Okay, when you're ready then, Mr. Stainthorpe, you have 3 minutes, and unless you've pre-arranged something different with the other person speaking in support, otherwise I'm assuming 3 minutes each, and Nikki Simpson will wave when it looks like you're getting to the end of the 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
As I said, I'm a resident of Peppard Ward. I actually live on Caversham Park Village, which until the 1960s, 1970s was a piece of privately owned land with very little access for anyone other than a privileged few. In the 1960s and 70s, it was developed as a mixed development of housing of various sorts of tenure, and it is now a popular residential area with plenty of public open space, unlike, as I said, what it was like previously. I moved to Caversham in the 1980s and became involved in the Save Bugs Bottom campaign, which was a campaign to prevent the development of a piece of land, a green lung. It wasn't public open space that we were trying to save. All you actually had was access along a 2 or 3 metre wide path along the bottom of the farmer's land. If you left that 2 or 3 metre wide path, you were actually trespassing on private land, the farming land. And what I see here is something very similar, in that Reading Golf Club is not public open space. For most people, apart from a privileged few, if you went onto that land, you are trespassing. And I think what we have in front of us is something very similar. Bugs Bottom, where we lost. We lost on appeal. And in fact, the development that took place on there, I think in fact it has been a good development. I look back on it and I think I was wrong. I think Reading Borough Council were wrong. I think there was a good development that could have come out of that without it going to appeal. It did go to appeal. What you have there now is good, but could have been better if actually the council had worked with the developer and not consistently opposed it. So Reading Golf Club, I mean, what we have here is what is a, you know, it's an outline planning permission, and as such, it should be treated like that. And we have, in fact, a very generous offer in terms of affordable housing. We have an offer. It's quite unusual. We have one of the reasons it's being refused is we have apparently no offer of suitable off-site compensation. But it seems to me we do have that offer. We have it in South Oxfordshire. It's unusual, but that offer is there. I could, as I say, easily have gone on for the whole of the 6 minutes, but I think this is an application that should be seen as an outline planning application. The details, we could overcome the objections, and I am in support of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. You'd like to stay there while the next speaker speaks, and there might be questions for both of you. Is Mr. Lee ready to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to talk regarding the planning application of Reading Golf Club. Although only having been a member of Reading Golf Club for a few years, I've played at Reading since the early 80s, and in my opinion, one of the nicest courses around. We were told by the committee that Reading Golf Club was in financial difficulty and possibly in the next few years would have to close. If that would be the case, what would become of the land? It may become overgrown and therefore no use to anyone. The committee proposed the sale of Reading Golf Club. As you will find in the planning application, they have included a much needed health centre, which can only benefit the local community. I know people will say, what about the infrastructure? But has it changed with all the new building works going on? For example, Napier Road, the old home base site? I would say the answer is no. Getting back to Reading Golf Club, the remainder of the course has already been turned into a family-friendly foot and disc golf, as well as a short 9-hole course. You never know, they may find the next Rory McIlroy. There is also on-site cafe where families can meet up for tea and cake and enjoy the lovely views. Lovely place to be on a day like this. I think you would agree. I also understand there is going to be allotments in the near future, which would also benefit the local residents. And that's basically why I support the planning application. If I may, I would like to add, I would also like to add that when the committee proposed the sale of Reading Golf Club and put it to the members, that there would be a substantial payout to the members if sold. And in my opinion, and the majority of the members will vote to sell, which was the case. The committee were also proposing a new site for Reading Golf Club, but were not prepared to say because of legal reasons. And so all we voted on was the sale of Reading Golf Club, which at the time I found, and many others found, very frustrating. Reading Golf Club has already received a non-refundable. 10 seconds left. I can't say any more.
Just 10 seconds left, just warning you nearly at the end, so
Okay.
carry on.
I've got a few more things to say, then it would take more than 10 seconds. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. And I'm going to ask the committee if they've got any questions for either of you, or indeed both of you.
Yes.
Councillor Stamford-Beale.
It's a question for Mr. Stainthorpe. Mr. Stainthorpe, you are one of my residents, are you not, in Caversham Park Village? One of the things about Caversham Park Village, the land was actually set out by Capability Brown, as I'm sure you're aware, and there are some trees there that are 300 years old. There's a couple of cedar trees very similar to the one in my front garden. The one in my front garden is only about 80 years old though, but they can live trees for a very, very long time. One of the issues we have regularly in Caversham Park Village is when householders ring up and complain about the overhanging trees, and they want the trees with long branches, large boughs to be cut, or they want the tree removed completely. Do you agree that that is an issue around you? And that now that Caversham Park Village does not have a large tree canopy as it did 10 years ago? Thank you.
Well, in fact, Councillor Stamford-Beale, the green lung that runs through Caversham Park Village, adjacent to where I live, is in fact that was designed by Capability Brown to take the carriages from the Henley Road, or in fact from Sonning up to the house. So I think that is actually an excellent example of something that has been retained, as I say. There is a significant amount of green space on Caversham Park Village. There will always be problems with trees. I think it is something that the council is very good at, and the tree wardens within Reading are very good at, is actually retaining trees, sometimes in the face of local residents. That is something that the council should do. TPOs are a useful weapon in that, and I am sure if Reading Golf Club was allowed to be developed as a residential development, that there would be many TPOs on within both the area that is within Reading and the area that is South Oxfordshire. So I think you are very usefully pointing out the fact that in fact there are legal measures, there are legal protections that can be put in place to prepare to actually protect green space within developments. And the same was very much true of the Bugs Bottom Shipnells Farm development as well. So thank you for raising that point.
I think you're a little bit disingenuous in your answer there, because I asked particularly about trees.
Sorry, how dare you call me disingenuous?
Councillor Stamford-Beale, have you got another question for Mr. Stanford?
I think you're referring to green space as in that it is literally green space, it's not trees. So yes, there is a large green space in the middle of Caversham Park Village. I agree with that
question, Jane. Have you any?
Sorry, have you a question for me?
No.
That I haven't answered?
Right, Councillor Ennis, you were indicating.
Yeah, and breathe. Do you not think, Richard, that there could be a potential of overdevelopment? What's your views on that potential of overdevelopment of this site?
Thank you, Councillor Ennis.
That's for the person on the telephone as well, Steve, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. I've spent a lot of time with this, looking at this planning application, and to an extent I do agree with you. My concern actually is future development in South Oxfordshire. Reading Borough Council would of course be consulted on that. I don't think actually on the patch of land that we're talking about here, if we're talking about the overall land that is Reading Golf Club, no, I don't think it is overdevelopment. I think there may be concerns about what could be if you just look at this smaller part of it. But I think, again, this is something that could be dealt with by actually using the area that is also owned by Reading Golf Club in South Oxfordshire. And it is slightly unusual for you to actually use land that is not within the borough, but I think it can be done. I think there are legal ways in which the overall development would be seen as not overdevelopment, if that makes sense, Councillor Ennis.
Sorry, would Stephen Lee like to respond to that question as well, as Councillor Ennis put it to both of you?
Okay, yes, fine. No, I don't think it's an overdevelopment, simply because what the gentleman just said. Basically the back 9 of Reading Golf Club is not being built on. That is being still used for, you know, the disc, the foot golf, the 9-hole short golf course, etc. Possibly allotments being added. So there's a benefit to that side of things being used for everybody that lives in the, you know, in and around Caversham. And obviously the top half of the course is where the proposed planning application is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anybody else wanting to ask any questions of either speakers? No, in which case can I thank you both, and we'll move on to a hearing from the agent Jonathan Walton. Right, good evening. Would you like to introduce yourself and say what's your relationship to the application, and then we'll give you the full 6 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, my name's Jonathan Walton. I'm the planning consultant for Reading Golf Club. Interestingly, I'm also a member of Reading Golf Club and was an Evergreen resident until very recently when I had to move due to the cost of housing and lack of availability in Evergreen. So it's my six minutes. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee, I hope you've had a chance to read and consider last week's letter from Fairfax's Managing Director that was forwarded to all members, as well as the briefing note sent last Friday. The facts of this application are actually very clear. Reason 1 for refusal. Policy EN8 sets out 2 tests as set out in paragraph 6.2.11 of the officer's report. In respect to the first test, we've provided replacement open space close by. The policy wording is intentional, recognising the tight geographical confines of the borough. The space gained will form public open space for the enjoyment of all local residents. In respect to the second test, we've suggested contributions for a 3G pitch, something identified by Sport England as beneficial, plus upgrade to Evergreen play area. Either one of the above satisfies policy EN8, particularly when considered with usable open and play space provided on site. Assessed wholly, it's obtuse to suggest anything other than policy adherence or exceedance. We've provided 2 robust barrister opinions to reinforce this view and to identify appropriate legal mechanisms to secure the land in SADC. A backstop also exists in that we could enter into a section 1 of 6 agreement with SADC to control the land being offered. Paragraph 6.2.21 of the officer's report recognises that policy EN8 concerns can be overcome. I also note the slight amendment to the reason for refusal, which I'll deal with now. Reason 2. The layout as submitted responds to Design South East's comments from March 2020. There were no substantive officer comments between this time and the recommendation for refusal. Importantly, we weren't invited to a more recent DRP meeting dated 6th of May, nor provided with any written or verbal feedback until 12th of July when we first heard of the officer's recommendation. Therefore, no time to either consider or positively respond to these matters was given. This does seem quite unreasonable. Looking at the comments, changes to the layout can be made to amend housing parcels, to provide a more continuous green link and more meaningful open space, in turn resolving minor outstanding comments in relation to a small number of trees. Against this, though, the current proposals do meet policy requirements in terms of EN12 and via significant centrally located, contiguous and accessible green spaces supported by major tree planting. The borough boundary is characterised by lower lying land. This rises gently into SADC. It's more appropriate to provide a landscape buffer for the housing development within the higher SADC land, which would form a more substantive screen. This can be secured in the same manner as the open spaces. Reason 3, there is only one objection on transport grounds. RBC officers agree that mitigation exists and that overcomes this reason for refusal, as noted in Informative 3, the officers' report. Reason 4, the application will result in 10% net biodiversity gain and meet EN12 requirements. The Council's ecologist recognises this, has offered no objection and has suggested conditions to the submissions made. Importantly, the Reading BAP identifies that net gain can be provided in neighbouring authorities. Our plans therefore meet relevant criteria. The policy CA1B allocation is in place, which itself would require off-site mitigation. The mitigation suggested will replace benign fairways and rough of low-grade ecological value. The reality, however, is that the biodiverse spaces offered stretch significantly beyond the area that we've identified to meet this net gain, as members may have noticed on the site visit. Residents will also finally have chance to access and enjoy this land. In terms of allocating planning balance, the officer has given too much credit to what is undesignated open space, whilst ignoring the land within RBC has no public access or rights of way across it. The rights of way are in SODC across the 10th. Our proposal allows this private land to provide significant usable green space, amenity space and other community benefits that would simply never be permitted otherwise. Reason 5. The proposals exceed requirements in terms of housing delivery. The most recent AMR identifies failings in delivery of affordable housing quantum and mix over the last 8 years. The affordable housing policy of RBC is 30%. We're providing 35%, which enables a further 13 affordable homes to come forward and 90 in total. The 30% offer is as we submitted, and we welcome discussions regarding the mix and tenure of the additional homes. We also will accord with the new SPD in terms of tenure split. Emma Green Surgery has made its submission to the council, and it's evident that a solution can be found to healthcare in the area. The school vacancies table from RBC highlights that the local school influx is either unfulfilled or taken by pupils from out of catchment. Rivermead Secondary School is also progressing, alleviating pressure on Highdown School. We offer a new network of paths and cycleways which do not require planning permission and can be controlled as per the open spaces and landscaping buffer in SODC. We've offered contributions also towards a raft of sustainable transport measures. New reason 6, which I only found out this afternoon, the proposals offer an 83% reduction in CO2 emissions and contributions to meet zero homes criteria. Discussion with officers and the new points raised can achieve full accordance with policy H5. To summarise, the applicants are passionate in working with officers to find solutions to concerns. We know these to be easily resolvable. We know that, with engagement, all issues can be fully and quickly resolved. The scheme delivers on multiple IDP objectives and the planning balance is firmly in positive territory. I therefore strongly urge members to defer the application to allow us the time we have not been properly afforded to review and properly respond to the concerns raised. I recognise there's a lot to take in. I therefore would urge members to ask me any questions. We've taken over 3 years to get to this point and we're in no rush. We simply seek meaningful engagement to find readily available solutions to questions posed. One last point, if you have any questions regarding the golf club's relocation to its new course and local plan issues raised, the club's general manager, Gary Stango, is here with this evening and would like to set some of the facts straight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll offer this for questions and there's hands going up everywhere. Councillor Ennis, I think I saw you first. Yeah.
I've got a couple if that's all right. The first one is about affordable housing. I know it talks about 35%, which is very much welcome. It's more, you know, it's good. Very much welcome that. But what types of housing or tenure? Because there is, you know, what's affordable? Affordable to you know, to a very expensive area or proper affordable, as I would say, living south of the river. That's the first question.
In terms of the response, yes, 35%, as I've mentioned, we've made the offer in terms of 30%, which sets out a balance in terms of mix. So the mix of the affordable follows the mix of the market. So you'll gain a number of family houses, a lot of family houses over 60%, 3 and 4 beds. In terms of the tenure split of that, we're going to follow the council's own policy, and that's 62% social rent and 38% shared ownership, which is in relation in line with your new SPD. Again, one of the things I'd come to is we'd welcome discussions with the housing officer who we haven't met in over a year.
Yes, thanks for that. The second one is about passive house principles. We very much in Reading are promoting this and are achieving it, will be achieving it, have achieved it. I don't see anything in the application that you're talking about, passive house principles, or certainly green energy, zero carbon efficiency, which is good practice, which we are definitely promoting in this town. What's your view on that? Why haven't you done it?
We're very passionate. I'm very passionate about passive house principles. If you look at Gorse Ride in Woking, which I took forward on behalf of Woking Borough Council, we achieved exactly that. In terms of this site, we have achieved an 83% reduction in CO2 reductions and put 135,000 aside to ensure that we meet the carbon offset and therefore 100% requirement. One of the issues we've had, and it comes back again to engagement, we have been liaising with the council in terms of the layout, in terms of getting the layout right in the context of trees, in terms of build, and in terms of open spaces. Many of the detail measures actually would fall to reserved matters, but notwithstanding that, we simply haven't finished these discussions. Reason 6 today, which was put in with regards to energy efficiency, comes off the back of the conversation I had on Monday where I was clarifying what our position was. I wasn't asked, can you do anything more? What else would you think about passive house principles? We simply haven't had those discussions. So I bring it back to the fact is we are an outline application. There are certain matters that we have to consider. There are certain matters that could and should be related to the reserved matters when you actually have more understanding of the materiality of your orientation of essentially glazing and solid to void. So that the relevant time to do that. What can be done is planning conditions can be put on the consent to make sure that certain requirements are met.
It's interesting that you've made a couple of the questions I've asked. You made a couple of points, which is definitely food for thought, but you've not had these discussions. You said that on several occasions. You've not had these discussions. Do you not think it might have been worth having them discussions before you put the application in? Because if you'd done that, I'll finish, don't worry. It is a question and a comment at the same time. But if you had that discussions that on both of these, you know, you said you're waiting, you're looking forward to meeting, and you want to meet, you haven't met in a year, the housing officer and the other, you know, regarding energy. If you'd have had the discussions, do you think that you might be, you know, it might not be a recommendation for refusal?
I'm really glad you asked that question because we have been undertaking this scheme for almost 3 years. We put forward a planning performance agreement and we got very little back from it for the first 9 months. And during the planning process, we have made no less since January this year, 14 requests to meet the council to talk to officers about all of these points, none of which were met. So the response I would give back to the council is, can we fix these problems? Absolutely. Why have you not wanted to engage with us? That is the question.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. First, thank you very much for coming in and getting a lot of information across to us in a short space of time. I'd like to pick up on just one thing. There's loads of questions, but I'm interested in the biodiversity. And I think your comment was that, in fact, there is a net gain. The officer is incorrect with the refusal reason that there is no net gain. And I think you also said that the relevant officer drew no attention to this and let me read it out, drew no objection and suggested conditions. But in the report before us, the relevant officer coming back to the planning officer on biodiversity noted, oh, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 reasons why the biodiversity calculations you'd done were simply wrong. That they were incorrect. No map was provided. Calculations were incorrect. There's more woodland on site than is noted. There's no justification given for any of the habitat condition assessments. You've not used any of the normal multipliers and so on. Not you personally, I apologise, but whoever produced your biodiversity calculations. Now, that doesn't strike me as something that you needed to talk to officers about. That strikes me as something that should have been done properly and should have been done properly up front. But is that something you think you can fix down the line? And why do you think there is a biodiversity net gain now when it's not been evidenced?
I think in terms of the calculations, that's a matter for discussion. There's an element of disagreement between the officer and consultant on that. One thing that's important is the DEFRA metric that is essentially the calculation has changed recently. That under normal circumstances would require review, and with discussion with the relevant officers, a position could be agreed in terms of the baseline. What's actually very important on this, having said that, is we've simply identified lands within the South Oxfordshire that would provide the 10% net biodiversity gain. If that is disputed, that is sort of moot in one sense, because the area we've identified is about 1/5 of the land that we're actually providing. The members that turned up for the site visit last week will have noted just how much that area has rewilded at the bottom. If we took them up to the golf course, which was mowed, was manicured, was quite clinical, and then we walked back down the bank into an area that was very fully biodiverse. Now, those lands, we haven't included all of them within the calculation. If we included those, and we also included the planting of 1,000 trees within that, we would substantially exceed the 10%. What we've done is just proven how we could meet the 10% to meet that policy requirement as a functional position. And again, those are the discussions that can be discussed, agreed, and a solution found. Can we get to 10%? Then absolutely.
So Stamford Beer.
Thank you, Chair. Let's clear up this matter of consultation and discussion with the council. I did ask officers about this, and they advised me that you withdrew your first application that you put in. You then didn't go to pre-app before you put your second one in. So pre-app would be an opportunity where you could have had those discussions. So it's a bit disappointing they didn't happen, because you're now saying you can fix some of these problems. So why didn't you go to pre-app? I've got more questions.
I agree on that point. We went to pre-app, and very honestly, we didn't get very far. And one thing I do want to make the point. The officers worked very hard on this. We've worked through, all of us have worked through very, very difficult circumstances. We've had COVID. It's been, Reading's had a lot of work. So we've known the resource difficulties, and the resource difficulties have manifest themselves in work, advice not coming back to us. So what we did do is we dealt with the comments that we had received, and we submitted it. We withdrew because we were in exactly the same position just before Christmas as we are now. We considered undertaking pre-app, but there comes a point where you've tried to do that where it hasn't taken you anywhere. So we made the submission, and we were seeking to deal with the issues. We thought that from January to July, when we first got the information back, that there would have been more opportunity to discuss the matters. Bearing in mind, we dealt with the principals at pre-app stage, we dealt with them during the first planning application. So we were starting to move on to more detailed technical matters, and it's that sort of element of the consultation that wasn't undertaken. So yes, we did take a decision not to undertake the pre-app, but that was undertaken based on what we'd seen previously.
Yeah, I have other questions. So let's just pick up this point that Councillor Williams made. If we look at page 322, 321 and 322 is where we had the issues over the disagreement between Reading's consultant and your consultant about the habitat units. Sorry. So the developers put in one number, and the consultant feels that it's just not correct and it's inaccurate, the calculation of the habitat units. The final paragraph just above 4.16 on page 322 says, regarding believe the 1,000 trees to be planted in SODC land. However, assuming these will be planted as single block saplings and 2 metre spacings, which is common in woodland planting and later thinned, equates to an area of woodland 50 metres by 50 metres or 0.0255 hectares, which will not make any significant contribution to offsetting the habitat units that will be lost on site. That's quite a damning statement. Are you disagreeing with that?
No disagreement with 1,000 trees in terms of its biodiversity, because it will take time for them to come forward. The point I was making was that the lands identified for biodiversity offset do not make up the totality of the lands that we're offering, and those lands are being offered in a manner that is rewilded. It's the same as what you get at Bug's Bottom, where you get the wild grasses and so on. So we haven't, if you want us to undertake a full calculation of what the biodiversity gain would be on all of the land that we're offering, not within the ancient woodland, but the other land, then that would quite clearly make more than 10% net biodiversity gain.
Okay, finally, with your green space calculations on site, you've included a very small finger of land north of the Spine Road in the calculations, as well as the land further along to where we've got the oak. And I'm pleased to see you've got a large tree root barrier, a tree protection area around that large oak, much larger than you actually need to have. That small finger that you have, you couldn't, it's not a green space that you could let a child play on. That's the issue there. And it's very fragmented. Now, to get, as Claire Grassoff said, to get to Cucumber Wood, you've got to leave this site, effectively go up a steep slope, walk through Cucumber Wood, which is ancient woodland, so we don't really want lots of people trooping through it. And then you have to go down a steep slope. It's you know, a very steep chalk escarpment down to the land. And on that steep slope, you're planning to put the saplings, according to this report, the tree officer told me there'd be 30-centimetre width, so trees that are that big. So you might have 1,000 of them to start with, but hot summer, you could lose 50% in a year. So they're unlikely to be 1,000 at maturity. So that land is not, it wouldn't be very easy if you were living in one of the flats at the front of the development to get your children up there. If you had any issues, or if they were small children, you know, it'd be a long way to walk. You'd have to go with a car. There's no parking. The access is very difficult to that area. So why do you think that's good compensatory land, bearing that in mind?
Well, first of all, as you noticed on the site visit, there is a footpath through the ancient woodland which can take you from south to north. But one of the reasons we put forward the community infrastructure plan was to show how else we could access that land. So you can access that land by walking down High Downhill Road, which would be accessed from the golf course, which would take you down to the National Cycle Network 5, which also links up with where the public right-of-way is. So on the western side, there are plenty of ways to access, which would take you down existing public rights-of-way. On the eastern side, the idea is to come in off Kidmore End Road. So you simply just follow the footpath. At the moment, it finishes, it terminates at a hedge. You just go straight through there. You don't need, that bit is not TPO'd, that bit is not perpendicular to a classified road. Therefore, you can create that access, and you can create a public footpath on the other side of that without the need for planning permission. So that's what we've been mentioning about the footpaths in SODC, because they're in private land, and as long as you are sensible about the construction, you provide low impact Hoggins style paths, then you can do that without planning permission. And the intent is to use that network of paths to provide a variety of ways into, out and around that site. Very importantly though, it does two other things. It gives open space back in an area of identified open space and place-based deficiency. The reason it's deficient is because the area looks at, or sorry, a small number of people look at the open space, but they gain nothing from it. So this gives something back. It also allows you to link Kidmore End Road, Crawshay Drive on the east, all the way through to Bug's Bottom and the strategic footpaths there. So in terms of allowing walking, cycling and movement, it's a very significant change to the area. It's a very significant improvement. The golf uses that are being provided are there again. That's an investment in the area. There's a cafe, it's an investment in families, investment in children. So the idea is to get people using the site. During lockdown, this land was quite well used when people were given the chance. So obviously has benefit, obviously has attraction, and that's what we want to work on.
We've got Councillor Devine wanting to ask a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question relates to the infrastructure. From what I can see on the main diagram, there is a single entry and exit point to the development, which is all planted around a single road, basically. And I just wondered how he how the developer sees that entrance point onto the current road network in that part of Reading, how that's going to go down, because to me it seems we are creating a bottleneck that is going to be very difficult to deal with. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Devine. I think at times people forget this was a golf club of, I think, 500 full-time members, something in the region. The golf club can clarify this, but certainly some in the region of 700 actual members when it closed. On busy days, the influx of users you'd have across spaced times was very significant. On weekends, in the morning, they would be coming against the flow of traffic. Equally, the trip rates and the traffic impact has been reviewed by the council's officers. They've asked a lot of questions, they've asked to clarify a number of matters, and they haven't come up with those as a reason for refusal. The one reason for refusal they came up with in relation to upgrade of the Peppard Road, Kiln Road, Caversham Park Drive junction is a matter that can be mitigated and a matter that we're quite happy to work with the council on.
And Councillor Emberson, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. My question's actually been answered in subsequent questions, so thank you.
And then Councillor Challenger.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick opening question. How are the discussions with South Oxford District Council going in relation to the part of the, site in their land?
Thanks very much. In terms of the South Oxfordshire proposals, there's been a number of objections to the application, which is essentially changing one porter cabin for a slightly posher porter cabin. Whilst that needs permission itself, the uses of the site and the access do not. It's an existing golf course, and that isn't changing, and the infrastructure and stuff is there. We would like to improve that. And we are discussing matters with South Oxfordshire now. One of the issues, I'm being very honest, is that we could, if we wanted to, come in off Kidmore End Road opposite Crawshay Drive and into the land. The reason that we haven't done that, which would resolve some of the issues in terms of getting access to the allotments and access to the country park and also access to the golf course, is simply in the same way that we haven't overstepped the boundary. We promised EGRA during discussions we wouldn't overstep the boundary. Putting in an access off that road can be read in the wrong ways. So that's why we haven't done it.
Thank you very much. And then obviously in 6.231, it talks about £100,000 will be given for 20 years to maintain this new almost national park that we're getting in the area. Obviously that works out to very little over 20 years. I believe we spend around about £5,000 on wood chip to maintain playing parks when they need reopening after COVID, for example. And obviously I'm not a housing expert, but as we've heard from Richard Stainthorpe earlier, we like our housing development to go on a little bit longer than 20 years. Why such a short and small contribution to such a sizable development?
It was felt that was appropriate. In terms of discussions with the council, that is something we can explore further. We actually put forward a number of options over previous years, including taking a service charge off the residential development as a way of covering things. As I say, it is a proposal at this stage.
In which case, thank you very much for your time, and we'll now continue with the debate amongst councillors. We may have one or two questions from you later. Right, I'm going to ask Councillor Stanford Beale or Councillor Robinson if they want to go first, because they're the ward councillors and that's what we usually do.
Thank you, Chair. So tonight we've heard from officers, the objectors, supporters and the applicant, and the recommendation is to refuse this application. As councillors, we need to balance the presumption for the development and the need for good quality housing with the climate emergency that we've declared.
Sorry, Jane, could you move your microphone a bit nearer? It's not recording. well.
Does that sound better? Do you want me to start again?
Sorry, yeah.
Is that better like that?
Yeah, that's better.
Right,
Thank
sorry. Tonight we've heard from the officers, the objector, the supporters and the applicant. The recommendation is to refuse the application. As councillors, we need to balance the presumption for the development and the need for good quality housing with the climate emergency that we've declared. Many people find they're priced out of the housing market in Reading for both purchase and rent, so we know we've got a strong demand for more houses. There are no other large-scale developments north of the river. However, this site is a former golf course of undesignated open space within the borough. It acts as a green lung, a sponge for heavy rain, and it offers green and pleasant outlook for the community in Emma Green. The application offers 35% social housing plus a medical facility. This application has received a very large number of objections, as did the previous withdrawn application. Most of the objections concern the loss of the green space, the trees, overdevelopment, cramming of houses into over and above the local plan number, concerns over the traffic congestions, the air quality and the lack of infrastructure, school places, doctors, surgery appointments, etc. The officer's report details many issues and the failures to comply with our policies and our local plan. I attended the site visit to be able to examine the plans in situ. I was concerned about if we look at the southern side of this, it's been noted in the tree officer's report about how we've got some large lime trees that were overhanging the gardens on the southern boundary. We've all been there with residents who've asked to have large trees cut back, which are TPO'd, and there's a big pressure to fell them. So we felt that that design was poor. Again, we've got the small islands, or sort of green fingers of green space, but they're not enough to allow a child to play on, and they don't provide that green link through the site. The offset land in South Oxfordshire is, you have to access it through the open woodland where there is already a hogging path, but do we really want a few hundred people to be walking through that to get to the very steep valley where they're planning to put the small whips, and then to get to the foot golf again, it's up another steep slope. I mean, I had people glare at me for wanting to actually walk up those slopes. They're not something that somebody who had any mobility issues would be able to do, and it would be difficult for a young mum with small children to get up and down those areas. And it's too far. If you live on the front of the development, you wouldn't want your teenagers to be going over there unsupervised. There are concerns raised in the officer's report. 4.11 is from South Oxfordshire, saying that the proposals go well beyond the strong edge of Reading up to a non-existent physical boundary with no provision to contain the development along that boundary. So there were concerns from South Oxfordshire. Why didn't they put the green space along that boundary instead of having the access road up to that point? The crime prevention officer had concerns about the lack of setting back and surveillance possibilities, so concerns that too many houses being crammed into the space. And I've already spoken about the ecologists that had issues over the calculations of the habitat units, and that these calculations were incorrect and it wouldn't make a significant contribution to offsetting. So those are all the environmental reasons why I feel that we cannot support this tonight, and I feel that we should be refusing it. I'm sure others will mention all the other things, but I do feel that I've already spoken quite a bit tonight, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you're the other ward councillor. I'll take you next.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to begin by thanking the officers for all their hard work and efforts in bringing this application to the committee this evening. I'd also like to thank both the Golf Club, Fairfax and the objectors from the Keep Emma Green, Cadra and Egra for putting their respective cases across for the benefit of this panel. And also my thanks to the many residents who have taken the time to either voice their objections or their support of the proposals on the council's website. I must admit that the uncertainty over the closing of the golf club and this proposal to develop the former golf club course and its open green space in Emma Green has hung like a proverbial black cloud over our community, causing a great deal of concern, anger, worry, and indeed uproar amongst many of our fellow residents in our ward. Emma Green, as many of you will know, is a great community, which in essence provides a village feel on the northern fringes of Reading. It is, as I and many fellow residents can attest to, a great place to live. And what makes it great are the people and the environment. Having green open space, such as the former golf course, is so valuable and vital to our community well-being, and to lose this would be nothing short of a tragedy to the neighbourhood. Given our commitment to a greener environment, I strongly believe we should be looking to protect green and open spaces, which are in effect the lungs of the environment, and should not be building on them. We have enough brownfield sites that can be used and should be used for this purpose. We have seen the golf club and its developers Fairfax put in 2 applications so far, the first being withdrawn in November last year for 260 homes, owing to the huge level of objections raised over this application. Then a second application proposing a paltry and laughable reduction of 3 houses to 257 submitted earlier this year, which has already overtaken the previous record in objections. I think it is fair to state that never before have Reading Borough Council ever received so many objections covering a whole multitude of valid arguments for refusal that should all be considered, not just on the loss of valuable open green space, issues such as increasing congestion. The roads in Emma Green heading into Caversham and the town are already overladen with traffic in rush hour times. Adding to this would increase pollution and cause immense issues and indeed misery to our existing residents and those commuting from South Oxfordshire into Reading. Matt Rodder, our MP in Reading East, suggested a 10-fold increase in traffic on our road should this go ahead. Our local infrastructure, our schools are already full, and certainly certain years see bulging at the seams. So adding an additional 257 families could be disastrous and would mean children having to travel further to attend schools where local schools cannot cope. Our surgeries are already running at full capacity, so adding further potential patients is again unsustainable. Whilst I do appreciate the offer of the new health centre, I would point out that in Reading we have had to close health centres or surgeries such as happened at the Priory Avenue surgery because of staff shortage. Therefore, a building without properly trained staff is no use whatsoever to the community and is somewhat an empty gesture. As one of the local ward councillors, I've obviously been monitoring the planning website very carefully and reviewing as many of the comments as I can. Amongst the many objections, I also found a small number of those supporting the proposal. Analysis of these approvals showed that many supportive comments among those that lived locally were actually members, directors and former directors of the golf club itself. Some comments about the supposed positive impact of the proposed development came from a number of supporters who don't actually live locally. Indeed, some from many miles away. One could assume it was friends and family of those with a vested interest were being asked to access the portal to provide support to make the numbers look good. And talking about numbers, it would be remiss of me not to provide a little context to the supposed support for the application. Back in early 2018, it was reported in Golf Business that a communication from Reading Golf Club had been sent to members stating they could be in line for healthy financial bonus should the site be sold off for development. The message reportedly read, "We would envisage that members could enjoy a financial benefit of a 6-figure sum proportionate to their membership subscription. It is therefore not beyond the realms of possibility that such a connection could be made or construed, and clearly this would also explain the overwhelming support from existing members, support for the application based on potentially what they could make from the sale of the golf club land, as opposed to what is in the best interests of the community of Emma Green." Finally, in closing, the Reading Golf Club have constantly put forward the messaging that this application, if approved, would leave a great legacy for the good people of Emma Green and the wider community. What utter and adulterated rubbish. The legacy this would leave would be one of worsening congestion on our roads, greater levels of pollution, a loss of much loved green open space, contrary to policy EN8 in the local plan, a severe burden on our existing infrastructure, on our schools and surgeries and roads. And let's not forget, if the horrendous mistake is made this evening in granting approval, up to 5 years of what would be disruptive and noisy development work taking place in our community right next to our local primary school and local care home. But above all, it would change Emma Green forever and not for the better. Chair and fellow councillors on this committee, I'm not against the building of homes and especially proper family homes with gardens because we do need them. I would more than welcome such an application if it were in a more suitable location with the associated infrastructure to support it. In other words, a sustainable development. Emma Green and the golf course is not the right location for a development of this size. I would remind the committee that the Gladman's proposal was for 245 homes, less than what we are considering today, and this was rightly refused with many similar arguments raised based on infrastructure and its ability to cope. For the reasons given and for the good of Emma Green, I would be backing the councillor officers' recommendation and urge my fellow committee members to refuse this application and assign this proposal to the bin of rejection where it rightfully belongs. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, thank you. People acting in self-interest, that's I've never heard that one before. I haven't got any, I've just written something down because I've read the papers and I was going to run, and I am, run with the objections because of what's been put in the report. I will say before I start, I'm, as ever, always as a proud south of the river person, I think I've said that before, impressed by the level of evidence discussion from the discussions about anything north of the river. I'm just so impressed with your political engagement, and the level tonight is really impressive of the evidence, the objectors and the reasons, and it's given us food for thought, and it's certainly given me, because I am torn, to be frank. I hear the objectors, I support the objectors. I was impressed with the agent. I was impressed with you. I thought you were very straightforward. I thought you were very honest, open and straightforward. And you've produced what you see as a vision of some sort of building development on that area. My question, my ask is to dialogue. People north of the river, it would be great for you to dialogue. Because the fact is, as a housing, I was a housing lead for a number of years, and the contacts with residents, particularly north of the river and west of our town, was young people, locals, not people from outside of Reading, not people who were going to add to the problems of health and roads and traffic and whatever. People who lived in the area were desperate to live and buy and continue and to grow and to have families in the area where they were born. And that's Emma Green, and that's the far reaches of Tilehurst. It's them areas where they want to stay there. And if you look at the developments, there's one out in Pinson's Manor in Tilehurst where thousands objected or hundreds objected, rightly so. I would be there myself, no doubt about it. But you then get hundreds of young people living in that area saying, when am I ever going to get a place in my area where I was born? When am I ever going to be able to have an affordable, semi-affordable, like I did in 1980 when I bought my house as a epoxy factory worker? When am I going to be able to, Tony, Councillor Page has heard that story. When am I ever going to be able to afford to live in my area that I was born in and my family grew up in? And that's the whole context of this discussion we're having, and why I am going to oppose it. I am going to oppose it, but tonight, because of the report and because the need for more questions than answers, to be frank. There's more questions in this, but I am going to make the point, and I think it was good to see Richard, talk about Bugs Bottom. I mean, I like to think myself as a veteran of opposition to housing development, which I've done on a number of occasions, and we've threatened to sit in front of bulldozers, which I would do because I quite enjoy that sort of thing. you know, to fight to the end. And then we've lost. And then I've gone to these developments, one in Southcote, and I've seen how the area we threatened it with increased traffic, with problems in health, with, you know, fumes, and it's going to be a disaster. And then I've seen it and thought, actually, it's really nice. And I've talked to the young people there who have bought houses, who are locals, and they really enjoy the area and they've made it a better life. And I think to myself, I was wrong to oppose that development. I did it for political reasons, to be honest. Let's be honest, did it for much political reasons. And I think I would appeal that we enter into a period of dialogue, because I think something will be built on that area. The local plan, it does say it's suitable for housing. It does say it. It's not protected, it's not open land. Now, I'm not a member of the Green Party who will oppose every single housing development, no matter what it is. They will do that. That's their raison d'etre. I want to see sustainable communities for young people living in this town, to be able to live in the area where they grew up. And that's places like Emma Green. So I'm going to oppose it tonight, but I would love you to come back and talk to the objectors, talk to the council, and try and bring something back more sustainable for people to be able to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. I cannot live up to that very interesting and fulsome and very felt statement. It's been a very, obviously a very challenging application. I first off would like to also offer my thanks to the residents that have chosen to become engaged, the residents that have chosen to actually, I know probably many of them made this part of their life to fight what they felt that they did not approve of. And I've been there, and I appreciate your efforts and your feelings. I have to say that I'm probably going to sound like, unfortunately, a broken record to Councillor Stanford Beale, in large part because I attended the site visit with her and along with Councillor Emberson. And it was a very, very good thing I did, because without being there in the setting, one really could not begin to understand the entire site, the what is on offer in South Oxfordshire, and what we with Reading Borough Council are actually being asked to potentially by the developer potentially approve. Obviously, the officer has not recommended that application, and I think part of it was very much answered for me when I went on site. I felt that Bucalia, that the answer to the EN8 situation, that the answer to open space all lay north in South Oxfordshire, that there was an attempt at integration, there was an attempt at saving trees, which I felt were going to be congested with houses, and there were going to be those requisite problems that we've talked about with the house fighting against a very large, probably beautiful tree when they wanted a sunnier back garden and everything. It felt like there was a conflict that was going to be created with such heavy development in the Reading Borough Council area, of such an intensification of housing, fighting with and not really allowing that open space, that EN8 answer, to happen within Reading. I understand that the developer has said that can all be answered north in South Oxfordshire, but those 1,000 whips don't replace our removed trees. Those 1,000 whips and that space up there do not provide those answers back to Reading Borough Council. In the end, I feel like it is a site that has benefits. It's got a surgery. It's got this wonderful aspect of affordable housing, which is very, very welcome. But I feel that it asks too much of a site, too much of a community, in a preponderance of heaviness and overdevelopment in that regard, that was just not going to allow us to be able to properly appreciate the site. So I know that most of those comments were addressed by Councillor Stanford Beal, but I'll also bring up too, when if you were to go on site, and if you come over here from the Kidmore End Roads portion, where you begin to see houses, and you're asked to enjoy that space in South Oxfordshire, that's a little bit of what me as a New Yorker would call a schlep. It's a walk over there. It is yes, quite a distance. I do not see, and then once you get there, it's not an area that is naturally accessible. It is down a steep slope, and I do not see, if I were living on that end of the development, a real natural desire to naturally gravitate and walk through all of the housing and everything else to go back there and to take advantage and enjoy it. I know that when I returned from the site visit with Councillor Emberson, who I think is half or a third my age probably, she came back and she said, "I'm bushed." And it was because we started at that end, walked all the way up and over there. It's a big, huge area. It's asking a lot of the development towards the Kidmore End Road. And in the end, I think that there has got to be some kind of way to deal with the obligation that we have from EN8, combined with the local plan, wherein we have also outlined 90 to 130 dwellings is obviously a very outlined kind of guideline, that there will very likely be some sort of housing on there, but this is not the answer. This is heavy. This requires this is too much development to really enjoy the open space. The single method in and out for me just really bothers me on so many levels. I just don't believe it's the right answer, the right way to think on that. But it does bring many, many good things to Reading. As Councillor Ennis said, many good things that we really, really want. Affordable housing, which is very valuable. But we're all Reading people. The developer is a Reading person. The people that have objected to this, we're all Reading people. We all want what is best and what is right. And without getting angry, without inflaming the situation more than it has been, as Councillor Ennis said, dialogue. That is, I think, what needs to happen at this point. And for the developer, hopefully, to take on board what has been said tonight and to come back with, I would hope, a better and more sane and more rational answer. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else. So can I ask officers if they have anything they want to add to what's been, or respond to in what's been said, either by councillors or indeed by the public speakers?
I've got nothing to respond to the public speakers, but I think a couple of times we've had comments about lack of engagement from officers during the course of the application. Sorry.
Did Councillor Devine get any chance to speak?
No, I was waiting for that.
Oh, you asked her a second ago.
Well, I asked a question first of the developer, but I've not spoken in the debate, no.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. I didn't. I thought you had done that. So do you want to say something now?
Yeah, very briefly. I recognise the feelings expressed by Councillor Ennis, because they're a lot of what I would like to express as well. But I think this is a development that is not quite right. And I think had the green lung space been part of the development rather than offside, then that would have been made more sense. Again, if we'd have had more than one exit, I think it would have made more sense. So there are a couple of big issues there. Much as I love the affordable housing contribution, much as I'm fairly sure there is going to be development on this site at some point, I think this is not quite the right answer. And I think, as has been suggested, there needs to be a bit more dialogue between developers and the council and indeed local residents to see what can actually be done to make the most of this site, because I just don't think this current proposal is the right one. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies again. So can I ask Julie Williams or any other officer to add anything that you need to add at this stage?
Okay, well, I'll start, and hopefully Susanna will jump in if I get anything wrong. So firstly, just looking at the history on this site, obviously we had the site allocation in the local plan where we had the CA12 allocation, which was for the portion to the east of the site allocated for residential development. So I think there's clearly the council has accepted that there will be some form of residential development on this site with a medical facility provided too. So therefore, in principle, we are acknowledging that development could come forward on this site in the appropriate way. So then moving to the pre-app engagement, we did have pre-app submission back in 2019. That came in June, and due to a number of issues, providing consultations, etc. I'm checking with the case officer, maybe she can come in here, but it looks as if we provided the feedback, the comments back to the applicant, but it looks as if we didn't do a final report. So that pre-app was closed in June, 4th of June 2020, but by then we also had dealt with at the beginning of the year a screening opinion, which takes quite a bit of time to do as well. So that was dealt with. And then we had the first application come in for this site on the 26th of May 2020. So that came in before we finalised the pre-app stage. I'm not quite sure quite what went on with the pre-app stage. Obviously, we don't directly manage the stuff in that way, but from what I could understand, that the feedback we were given back at that time was not very dissimilar to what we've already said in terms of considering the current application and the previous one. So in that sense, the indication was there about where we felt that more could be done in terms of the fact we'd allocated a proportion of the site for development, but we saw the rest of the site as being undesignated open space and to be protected by our policies. So then we had the second application come in, the first application came in, and obviously that came in whilst we were in lockdown or in that phase of time. So we weren't actually having in-person meetings, but certainly my impression from the several meetings I had with Susanna was that there was quite a lot of email exchange going on and that sort of thing was going on. Whether we had actual meetings, that wouldn't have had happened. And I do recall that when we were coming up to taking this to committee, we were trying to get it to committee in December. And we were, I think it was December or early January, Suzanne can remind me, and we made it clear to the applicant that it was, given the basis of our concerns, that it was heading for, if it was going to committee, it would be recommended for refusal at that stage. And so that's when I believe the agent and clients decided that they would withdraw the application to enable them to amend the scheme. So that was withdrawn just at the end of November in 2020. The new application came in on the 6th of January 2021, so just over a month later. And we have now brought it to committee now because what we felt was that, well, we tried to indicate what we were looking for on this site, and in terms of what's been submitted now, there wasn't much more to say, I suppose, in that sense, but we have been emailing and exchanging with the agent, and fair enough, I've only had my first meeting with the applicant and the agent, applicant and agents, about a month ago now, and I think we've had a second one since then, and I was on the site visit. But as I say, in terms of dealing with the application, I'm satisfied that we have dealt with it correctly, as we've already had described today. This was a very unusual application in terms of the volume of work coming in, so it would be impossible to expect a case officer to deal with the application, deal with all the correspondence that was overwhelming, plus the fact that our consultees, who are also working in pandemic, were not able to get our cell responses back. You know, it wasn't never going to be a smooth application one in a, you know, like that. But I actually, you know, all credit to Suzanne. I think she's done a fantastic job in trying to balance all of this out. And I don't think the recommendation would come as a big surprise to the applicant.
I think you've probably covered it. I don't see Susanna if she really wants to say something. No, okay. Right, thank you. I'm going to move this on now to the vote. And given it's such an important application, I think I probably will ask people to indicate, and I'm sorry that Councillor Devine can't vote because he's not able to be here in person, but I don't seem to have the alphabetical list, but I'll work it out somehow. Right, I'm going to ask people to indicate if they are. Well, I'll second it. I don't think we really do that, do we? But anyway, right, Councillor Challenger, where are you at?
The pressure there. I support the officer's recommendation to reject the application.
Right, and Councillor Carnell, I think that's.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also supporting the officer recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. And Councillor Emberson?
Refuse.
Councillor Ennis?
Support officer recommendation reluctantly.
Councillor, sorry, I'll probably get this a bit wrong, but Councillor Leng?
I support the officer recommendation.
Councillor McEwen must be next. Yep.
I support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Page? Councillor Rowland?
Support the officer recommendation.
And have I forgotten anybody other than me? Oh, Councillor Stanford Beale, and then Councillor Robinson.
Support the officer recommendation to refuse.
I think we, Councillor Robinson
Yep, support the officer recommendation to refuse.
and Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I support the officer and thanks for all their hard work.
Thank you, and I also support the officer recommendation. And can I just add that I think it would be helpful if further meetings were to take place and look at the issues surrounding this this site and try to find a way, as Councillor Ennis and Councillor Rowland have said, to engage properly with the community on this and look at a way forward rather than ending up in a lengthy appeal or whatever, which isn't going to get us anywhere really. So I hope that the developer will take that away and come back for further discussions. Finally, can I also thank Susanna Bedford for her work on this. It's been, as we know, it's been difficult with COVID and all the rest of it, but thank you very much for a very comprehensive report. Right, I'm going to suggest now that we just have a very, very quick dash to any facilities we need to find. And can we all be back within 5 minutes if at all possible, please? Thank you. Right, can we all take our seats then, please? I think the 5 minutes is up. And it's a late hour and I am not going to be sat here at midnight like we were on a previous occasion. Right, people will have to join in when they get back. I'm going to take item 12 next because sitting very patiently is the developer for this particular application, so it seems only fair to take it next, even though there isn't actually public speaking. So, officers, have you anything to add? It's Brian, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's nothing to add.
Thank you. Any of members of the committee want to make any comments? Councillor Page.
Chair, can I welcome this application? Obviously, it is a sensitive site, particularly as it is right next door to a very historic pub, the Butler. I should declare an interest. I have drunk there regularly over nearly 50 years representing that area. It has always been a very good pub. It has never occasioned complaints. It's been well run by the successive owners, including the current one. And Mr. Stanton has written into us, and his letter is in the update pack. I don't see anything in the application that compromises the integrity of the Butler nor their future aspirations. The issue of the live music and cultural events is covered in the report in the sections on pages 154 to 155, and the agent of change principle is well set out there. And it is right that established uses of particularly pubs should be protected. And Mr. Stanton quite rightly makes the point in his letter that, which on page 17 of the update, that the live music and cultural events at the Butler are a very important part in sustaining and maintaining the financial viability. And that is to be respected in what is a long-term local pub. But the point is also made in the report that the regeneration of the area and provision of more residential right next door, and ultimately in that wider area, should be a benefit as well to the pub. And so it's not all one way. There will be benefit from the new neighbours, but he's quite right to raise the issue. The point that's made in paragraph 6.3.17 about informatives is valid, but we know from many, many years of sticking informatives in about residents' parking permits that most agents and developers deliberately ignore them, and indeed some have misled prospective purchasers. We can only go as far as we are able to in terms of informatives, but the point is well made in that paragraph about the need for developers to inform potential purchasers of those mitigation measures. One would hope that any person wanting to buy a flat would at least look round the area, and if you see a pub right next door to it, you would imagine that that pub will open and will have all the the benefits and perhaps downside of a pub. References made, and I need to be very careful in what I say. There's references made also to the face bar. The face bar, all I would say is that for 25 years it has generated consistent complaints. It is the subject of outstanding action by our environmental health. The top floor, the first floor, is closed because of a failure to deliver on measures, acoustic attenuation measures that have been required. The reason it hasn't been reopened is because those measures have not been delivered to the satisfaction of our environmental health. It's a two-way process. The new developer has to provide measures, but there's also a responsibility on the owner operator of a venue. And I would make the point that unlike the Butler Public House, which has been there for hundreds of years, the Face Bar was never intended as a nightclub. It was the trade union club. It was relocated from Minster Street. As you remember, you and I drank there on many occasions. It was a smoke-filled place at the best of times, but nonetheless, it was a popular facility, then relocated to the current venue, and it was designed as a members club, never as a nightclub. And the Face Bar have consistently failed to deliver on their responsibilities. And I'll leave it there, Chair. In terms of the wider benefits of this scheme, it starts a regeneration of a wider area. The final point I wanted to make, because I recognise that my colleague also wants to make some points which I won't duplicate, is about the car club facility. And I do have a question to officers about this, because it is important that we start the process of having a car club on the site, and that is referenced in the report. But there is in the section on the car club, I'm just trying to find it now, if you bear with me, I'm just trying to find what the page is. I did flag it up. Here we are. On page 161, no, my apologies, 162. At the bottom, under the community infrastructure levy and the section 106, the developer should fund the provision of a car club bay. I think that's the developer should fund the provision of a car club and a bay. And the section 106 needs to make this quite clear that we are looking for the provision of a car club here. The bay is also part of that. I do not understand fully why we're only requiring this for 5 years. And why what, are we expecting car clubs to suddenly end, or is this to be the start of a subsidy? Are we assuming it will become commercially operational? That is the first question. The second question relates to the compatibility of this car club with what we will be requiring on the adjoining sites when they are redeveloped. And what we need to ensure is that in the approving a car club here, we have the basis either of a facility that can be expanded to be used by other adjoining developments, or is one that is certainly compatible with the locality, because I fear that as currently drafted, this will be seen by the developer as more of a token, one that is solely focused on that development, when in fact we have hundreds of other developments nearby, existing on Chatham Place, for example, adjoining to come on this site. And the one way of reducing car usage in future is to reduce car ownership and to increase car clubs, so that one has the ability to draw down on that vehicle without contributing or requiring a parking space. So I would request officers to provide some clarification, or if not this evening, that to delegate for further discussions with ward members about how we can, this is the point we have raised with Brian and officers on previous occasions, how we can ensure that the provision of the car club facility here is of wider benefit in the longer term. But other than that, Chair, I welcome the application.
Point for now. And Councillor Rowland, you've got something to add?
Right, thank you, Chair. I just simply want to draw also, I agree with everything that Councillor Page said, and I also agree about the Butler Pub being something that with the agent of change addition with the MPPF is something that needs to be protected, and that section in the MPPF states that existing businesses and facilities should not have an unreasonable restriction placed on them as a result of development permitted after they were established. So my question is more, we know that is the situation, but in terms of the west flank of the development, which I think comes to about 3.5 meters from the edge of the Butler Pub, with windows that will potentially be looking down into that area. What exactly, and I know in page 154 to 155, I do believe, yes, that is where the agent of change principle has been discussed. Just some feedback from officer as to how that actually happens, so that site is responsive to the noise, the potential established noise in the area. In terms of windows, I mean, is triple glazing considered to, solve all of those problems? Are there also situations with overlooking that perhaps a glazing type of situation on the windows might possibly provide some more privacy and allow that the Butler Pub to continue to function without undue aggression from a new development coming to the west. So that's really kind of my question as to how that western end especially would respond to that. And I also take Councillor Page's point on board too about the face bar. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a very quick officer response to those 2 points? And we may need to delegate to finalise the actual conditions, depending on what you say.
No, that's fine, Chair. Understood correctly. So in response to Councillor Rowland's points regarding the relationship, I think it's the eastern elevation, unless I'm getting confused, but Butler Pub, the acoustic and noise assessment submitted with the application provided us with a reasonable degree of comfort that residential occupants will have the ability to have a decent level of sound insulation against any activities that may occur at the Butler Pub. Obviously, the Butler Pub, the same with the face bar, are not currently in operation, and therefore officers have relied upon historic worst case scenario noise levels for those adjoining uses. These would be considered, as you rightly say, to be within the report. They include glazing, mechanical ventilation systems, which, whilst they would provide levels of acoustic kind of buffering, obviously no local authority or developer can make a resident use them. But as Councillor Page rightly says, it wouldn't be unknown to a resident that a pub existed there. And obviously we would provide them with all the relevant necessary built fabric to ensure that should the worst case live music events be occurring, residents have the ability, and likewise the live music venues have the ability to operate, without sort of treading on each other's toes. The other point, Councillor Rowland, you made, which was regarding overlooking, officers have looked quite carefully at not only the relationship with the new development and the pub itself as it exists, but also the relationship to the approved hotel use, boutique hotel, which was granted, I believe, in beginning of 2019. Now, obviously, at the time, there was similar concerns raised by adjoining landowners as to whether the site allocation could be brought forward and whether skylights that were proposed in the hotel use would cause a overlooking issue if development around the pub was brought forward. Looking at that approved planning permission in some detail, officers have aligned the rooms, the uses, and where it exists, the hotel rooms all have secondary skylights as well as ground floor primary windows looking out onto the courtyard. So from a council perspective, we don't insist, as we all know, we don't insist upon the same levels of outlook, natural light, privacy for temporary residential uses like hotels. And obviously in this case, the developments are considered to be compatible based on the arrangement of the site in front of you. I think that was the 2 points.
The car club as well.
Oh, beg your pardon. Sorry, yes, council paid to car club. So obviously the section 106 head to term sets out the mechanisms we feel would be relevant to secure the car club. The location of the car club, in order for it to grow as the site allocation grows, would need to be on public land. The transport regulation order that's been put as part of the heads of terms would allow the initial space to be created for a private provider to set up a car club. This would be supported with the single space by this development over the period specified, which is 5 years. That period of 5 years is what our local plan SPD, transport SPD, requires. To go any further than that in terms of creating additional spaces or for a longer period of time or for financially supporting the car club wouldn't necessarily be justified for a site of this size. And we need to be mindful that if other sites do come forward and are granted planning permission, they will need to be treated in the same way and a consistent approach applied to a local car club that has been created, or if there is a car club nearby that serves the development equally well. So it's neat. The wording is carefully worded so that we can maintain a consistent approach, and we can expand any car club provision with, let's say, additional sites coming forward that may require 2 spaces to be set up. This site for 54 units requires 1. Other sites may require more. But in terms of timescales and public land traffic regulation orders, that needs to be consistent. Thank you.
Can I just ask for clarification then, because this is important, that penultimate bullet point on page 162 says the developer should fund the provision of a car club bay. There is no reference there to funding the car club. And bearing in mind that there will be pedantic lawyers no doubt involved, and they're paid to be pedantic, it will be they will focus on that, and they say we're just being asked to pay for a car club bay. Who's paying for the car club? Not us. Is that, I mean, I would suggest the word "and" needs to be inserted, provision of a car club and car club bay, or something along those lines. But that, I take it, the intention is for them to subsidise the car club as well as pay for the bay. I'm sorry if it sounds pedantic, but it's just the sort of thing I know that will be picked up on.
Yeah, Councillor, you're right. That is the intention, and it may well be that we need slightly further discussions with our transport officers post committee. And as you say, the option to delegate for further discussions is there.
Could I ask for that? Because I think sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say on page 125, where you've got the proposed heads of terms of the section 106, we've got, first of all, provision of a car club bay. Then the provision of 1 car club vehicle would be provided on first occupation. Presume that is the car club, isn't it? That'd be in addition to providing the bay, and then that is reviewed to see if there's any further spaces required or cars required. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So does that answer your question? Because it's not just the bay; it's also provision of the vehicle and the car club itself. The mechanism for hiring it.
I agree with Councillor Page. I would. Oh, that didn't the other side. I'd
Yeah.
be the task.
Look, can I suggest that, I mean, we all understand.
No.
Okay.
I mean, they need effectively a car club management.
Yeah.
Can I suggest
Yeah.
that we
okay.
finalise that in consultation with the ward councillors, and we all understand the sentiment I think that's been expressed. So, yeah. In which case, unless there's anybody else wanting to speak, can I? I'll take it, Councillor Page, you're proposing, and Councillor Rowland is seconding that we accept the recommendation, as long as we add in the bit about sorting out the car club minute. And
Chair, and the changes in the update report as well. There's changes to the recommendation in the update report.
Oh yeah, and those, yes, sorry, I thought you were telling me we hadn't listened to it. Right, can I see all those in favour of the proposal to grant planning permission? Can you all put your... Yeah. Thank you very much. Now we'll go back to item 10, which is Ethne Humphreys going to report on the Cardiff Road application on page 39.
Thank you, Chair. Just have a brief update, and that's to advise that the Environment Agency have formally confirmed that they have no objections to proposals, subject to conditions which align with those already proposed in respect of flood risk and are summarised in the main agenda report. I can also confirm that the applicant has agreed the pre-commencement conditions proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments, Councillor Page?
Chair, I welcome this. This is an important recycling facility that is to be expanded in an area of employment, a designated employment activity. Our local plan, besides obviously being strong on providing more affordable and housing sites, also recognises that people need jobs. And this is an area entirely appropriate for an expansion of recycling, which as an authority we are strongly committed to. And whilst this isn't our recycling, specifically its wider industrial products, it's still a very important activity that hopefully will continue to grow over the years. I also welcome the reference on page 42 that the applicant is providing 2 parking spaces with electric vehicle charging points in this new enhanced scheme. So I welcome it very warmly.
Councillor Stamford-Beard.
Very much welcome this. As Councillor Page has said, it's industrial activity in a designated zone and it's more employment. I'm particularly pleased to see in 6.2.6 that we're going to have 2 rowan trees, that they are going to be implementing our tree strategy and planting trees. Not that I like trees, of course. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else, so can I take it, Councillor Page, you're proposing we accept the recommendation, and I'm happy to second that. Great. Can we see all those in favour? Thank you. And then we'll actually go back to the order just about, apart from the golf club, of course. Item 13, page 177, 134 Oxford Road. And Julie, I think you're...
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's me. I'm very pleased to be presenting this application. It's for part of the High Street Heritage Action Programme. We were awarded just under £10,000 from Historic Kingdom for cultural projects, and this is one of them. It's artwork to be placed on the railings at Central Swimming Pool, titled Through Your Eyes. It's recommended for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to welcome this as part of the High Street Heritage Action Zone works to celebrate the cultural heritage of the Oxford Road. This also will be looking to the ways that the Oxford Road is going to continue to regenerate for the future positively, to embrace its cultural heritage, and along with that, begin to turn possibly, quite possibly, a picture on the ASB along that road and in the area to make it a more positive living area and destination area for the rest of the town. So I very much warmly welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else. So Councillor Rowland, if that's a proposal to agree the recommendation, I'll happily second that. Those in favour? Thank you very much. And then we go on to item 14, which is 75 Loverock Road. I think, Julie, you're introducing this one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a proposed use for employment uses in the co-employment area. No problems in recommending approval for it, subject to relevant conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Any comments or questions? No, I propose we accept that recommendation. Councillor Challenge, would you like to second that? Second. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. And then we go on to item 15, which is the application for the toilet at Caversham Court. Julie again. Thank you. On page 193.
Thank you, Chair. Application by the council for relocating better toilets for the gardener at the Caversham Court Gardens. It's deemed to be acceptable application in terms of the listed building and the effect on the gardens. Recommended for approval.
Thank you. Seems a very positive proposal. Happy to propose it. Councillor Rowan, you seconding it? Yep. Those in favour of the proposal? Thank you very much. And then we get on to item 16, which is the North Court Avenue proposal on page 201. I believe Claire Ringwood is going to introduce this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's nothing to add to the recommendation in the main report.
Thank you. McEwen, would you like to, as the ward councillor, speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be aware that some residents have contacted ward councillors with concerns about the application, which hopefully the concerns have now and queries have now been resolved by officers. I think this application provides much needed care provision within the town, so therefore I am inclined to support the application. However, I do have a query if officers can help me. The document talks about the parking plan. Sorry, I'm getting tired now. So if you look at page 217, the officer's report talks about the traffic management plan. So I'm just a little bit concerned about the strategy, which talks about a policy for saying that residents, there's like an appointment system for visits and how that's part of the strategy. So I think throughout COVID, obviously, it's been we're kind of used to having an appointment system to visit people in care homes. But obviously, as we come to the end of the pandemic, it's not really realistic for that to continue. So just thoughts on that, because obviously that will have an impact on the parking in the area.
Could we have a response to that before I call Councillor Stamford-Beale?
Yes, we can certainly consider that as part of the car park management plan. It's a good point, actually. And I think that can still be addressed through the condition, whether the appointment system remains, and we could probably look into conditioning that.
I think what we're saying is we don't think it should continue. I think that's
yeah, I think it's not realistic for it to continue. I think the appointment system post the pandemic, I think most people do want to visit their family. I mean, I'm saying that as somebody who actually works in an extra care scheme, manages an extra care scheme. Very unlikely, very unpopular decision to tell people when they can visit their family. So I don't think it's a viable option to have an appointment system going forward. So I don't see how that kind of makes part of the management parking plan.
Yes, maybe that'd be something that we could discuss with transport. I don't know whether Darren might be able to give some advice.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So I'm just jumping in because I don't know whether, because if the care home choose to operate in that way, maybe they found by having an appointment system it actually made it easier for them to manage visits. And it may well be the correct way to manage their allocation of car parking spaces. So I think it's as I say, I think we can discuss this with the applicant and our transport colleagues about how that would actually work in practice. I don't know if it was a suggestion that the applicants made because that's how they want to go forward, and maybe they actually found it was the better way to manage visits to the place or not. I don't know, but would you be happy to delegate that to officers to refine that condition?
I'd be happy to delegate it in consultation with the ward councillors. Councillor Ennis, was it on that point?
but
And then I haven't
it
forgotten
was
Councillor
because
Stanfield.
I mean nobody wants to oppose care homes, and we were discussing one recently in the Southgate area, and it's very similar. Is that we have to be honest about this, that you know, people visiting their families and will drive there. They very I would expect low uptake of public transport, and that's why I think it's really important to get this right, because whilst to support the application, I think it's up in the air. The parking and the traffic issues to me is up in the air, and to say it's an appointment system, I don't think that's traffic management. And I would like to see a little bit stronger, maybe, you know, that we agree, but there's discussions and agreements with officers and ward councillors who called it in rightly about the parking to have some traffic management, because you could have a risk there of cars piling out into the street, and it's tight up at Northcote Avenue, isn't it, in round parts? It's tight, and you could have overflow, you could have problems, and there's nothing we could do about it, and then we'd have to sit in traffic management panel talking about it. So I'd rather we cut it out at the source and try and get something right now. And Councillor Page is laughing, he knows the irony of that, and now before we have a problem. So that's what my recommendation would be. I don't know if Ruth, Councillor.
Councillor Stanfield, you indicated a while ago, sorry, but I think we needed to bottom that point out.
That's fine, thank you. It was just to say support it, and particularly because they were looking at increasing the number of beds, particularly for acquired brain injury. Unfortunately, there's a lot of middle-aged men that go and buy powerful motorbikes, then fall off them, and then get an acquired brain injury and require long-term care. Unfortunately, that's been a bit of a trend over the years. So we do need to have, available care home beds, apart from the rising number of people with dementia. So we very much support the application, as long as we can sort the traffic out.
Okay, and Darren, did you want to just comment on the advice, the whole issue of relatives having to make an appointment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the requirement that has been put forward is by the applicant, in terms of they've stated there will be an appointment system. So it's something that we've taken on board as part of the car parking provision on the site, but it is something that the applicant has put forward to kind of manage the parking. But it seems as if from the information provided, it is just a general way of management of the facility. From the correspondence we have here.
Well, yeah, it's just to sort of reiterate, if you look at 7.25 on page 217, it does state that that's part of the policy, so it's a little bit misleading, I find. So I think it will cause problems within the area if we haven't supported people using, the parking facilities. So if there's too much parking in the area, it will, have an impact on the local residents, therefore increasing complaints. So I don't think it's very clear. And obviously we support the application because there is a need, but I think we need to sort out this parking issue.
Well, perhaps we could suggest in the recommendations that, in consultation with ward councillors, there's further discussion with the home about how they intend to both allow people the freedom to visit their relatives when they need to, but also, not to have a rigid appointment process. I'm with Councillor McEwen on this. I think it's really something that's a growing trend. It's a bit of a worry. So does that?
Yeah, so that's fine. So just to be clear, you're happy to approve the application, but you want that condition to be redrafted in consultation with yourself. You're not asking for it to be deferred, the whole application to be referred. No. Yeah. Right, brilliant. That's as long as it's clear. Thank you. Yeah, that can be done.
Thank you.
Okay, so take your last bit as a proposal to accept the application or support the application. I'm happy to second that. Can we see all those who are in favour of that recommendation? Thank you. We then go on to, we've deferred item 17. Seems like a long time ago, but we did. We go on to item 18, which is the two applications for Cody Park, Wensley Court and Irving Court and Riversley Court. So I've lost my note. Jonathan Markwell introducing this, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing to add to the main report already in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Emberson, as the ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the officer because, you know, staying on this late and just saying no further comment because it's a, you know, it's a very comprehensive report, and, you know, the committee will be well aware that it was agreed that there would be a development of 46 new homes on the Wensley Road estate, and the applications before you tonight form the next phase of investment at Wensley Road, and it's about improving the existing accommodation there. And given the time, I won't go on for too long, but I just wanted to pick up a few points. Firstly, and something that Minster councillors really welcome, is the better waste facilities proposals, particularly the tri-separator system, which may sound very basic, but will make a very big difference to residents in terms of waste management across the estate. Secondly, I'd just refer to the sustainability at the site, which is referred to throughout the report in terms of enhanced energy efficiency, triple glazing and improvement of external walls, roofing, low energy lighting, fittings, etc. And whilst this helps with our net zero carbon agenda, it also helps reduce energy bills for residents, which is really, really important. There's also reference in the report to the new bike lockers which are proposed, which helps in terms of the active travel agenda we have. And overall, I think it enhances the aesthetics of the site as is in front of us this evening, and it improves the communal amenity spaces at the site and considers landscaping regarding each block so that it makes the estate more sympathetic to one another of the blocks, and also contemplates the kind of upcoming development that has started. So no doubt with members having read the report in full, they'll be aware of some of the issues raised in the report, and I feel with my local councillor hat on that the conditions do provide sufficient reassurance to the committee to move this motion and approve it this evening and go over the recommended approval. And of course I will be abstaining, but I just wanted to end by saying that the committee will recall I supported the new homes at the time that came, and I hope that the committee will now approve the improvements of existing homes through these applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ennis.
Feel great pride in not having to declare an interest and being able to vote for this. It just shows, you know, welcome very much to massive investment into the area that's needed, into the flats and into the new developments that's taking place that will change lives in a positive way forever for many people, many of our people in Reading. And I really welcome the flats, the work that's going to be going on the flats that will assist the residents and tenants there. I would make one point, and it's about the construction hours, and maybe it'd be worth bringing in line for phase one, because we have phase one, which we've agreed, which was, you know, a lot of people were against it, but I hope that they'll be able to see soon the benefits of that area and the improvement in the life choices. So I would like to see phase one construction hours. I don't know what the view on that is, suggestions from officers to try and bring that in line, and I'd like to move that, if possible, to keep that planning condition in line and to make it clear to the builders that that needs to be maintained. I don't know what the view of the officers are, Councillor Chair, but I'd like to propose that.
Thank you, and I'd happily second that. I think it's a sensible suggestion, because how do people know whether a lorry is going to do up the flats or build the houses? So it would seem right to have the same hours of construction in particular. Does that is Jonathan, are you nodding there? Yes.
Yeah, I can confirm. I think it would be my intention to align the construction hours to be the same on the application from last year than it is this year. I think from memory of the one from last year was the standard hours, with the exception of I think it was Saturdays where the standard hour is 8 a.m. I think on the condition we moved it in an hour to 9 a.m. And I'm pretty sure my intention is to do the same on this for consistency purposes.
That's my recollection as well. So anybody else on this? Otherwise, with the exception of perhaps making a bit clearer in the conditions that we are going to have the same. It's not standard conditions, it's that weekend difference or Saturday difference. I'm happy to propose that, well, I think Councillor Ennis has already done that, so I'm happy to second his proposal. Yep. All those, apart from Councillor Emberson, who's declaring an interest and not voting, all those in favour? Thank you very much. And now we go on to item 19, which is...
Sorry, Councillor, just to confirm, that's both the planning and the advert application for item 18. Do you need to do separate agreements, or are they both passed? Because there's a planning application and a advertisement consent on.
Right, would you like to propose again, Councillor Ennis? Yeah. And I'll second. Thank you. All those in favour of the second application? Thank you very much. Sorry, it's getting late. 5, the Brook Mill. Anything to add to that?
No, I was just going to say nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
No, are we happy to agree that? I think they're an ideal example for other people to look at. So can we approve that? Oh, yep. All those in favour, thank you very much. We're getting there. Item 21 is Prospect Park, the play equipment. I believe Claire was going to introduce this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. An update report has been included, and the recommendation to grant remains the same as detailed in the main report for the Reg 3 application and the listed building consent. Thank you.
Much. Councillor Rowland, I believe you want to speak as the lead councillor, and then you won't be taking part in the vote. So,
yes, thank you, Chair, and I am declaring an interest as a lead councillor. I'd like to welcome this very much as part of the plans to ensure that Prospect Park is that park in the west of town. Forgive my earlier direction mistakes, but yes, in the west part of town, that will be coming forward with improvements. The playground did need to be moved, and this is an area that is more sustainable and also more accessible too, which is extremely important when looking at the way we deal with our playgrounds in the future. This includes also the connection with tarmac paths from the existing eastern and southern paths to the new playground area, and a reinstatement of the older playground area to back to natural open space. I appreciate the officers' update packs, which were clear and lay out the situations regarding trees, and that will be an ongoing situation. What we're really looking at here is the playground reinstatement, and obviously the trees, the way we care for them in the park, is something that is regularly reviewed. So thank you, and I will be obviously abstaining on this one.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamford-Bill, you're also going to not take part in this vote, but you want to speak
Yeah, just briefly, I would like to just congratulate officers on the amount of effort they put into with the play parks, particularly this one, because unfortunately an oak did fall and damage some of the equipment, so the park had to be closed. And we've now found a suitable new site. We are making sure that you can access the play park, which sounds a bit obvious, but if there isn't a suitable path to get there, if you've got mobility issues, you can't access it. And although we have very few children that have mobility issues as young children, we do have parents, maybe grandparents that would like to take the children to the park. So therefore, to be able to have a route that is wheelchair accessible, or somebody who's on crutches or walking with a stick, is actually really, really important to make sure that all our facilities are accessible. And the officers have been very good at including the Families Forum and other individuals in the choice of the play equipment, as well as public consultations. It's currently on the Facebook feed asking people if they'd like to vote for different equipment, and we're very careful about making sure that there is the opportunity for, you know, rocking, spinning, falling, climbing for all our children with different sorts of facilities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ennis, as the ward councillor.
Yeah, I do very much welcome this. You know, I am biased, but this is the finest park in Reading by a stretch. No disrespect to Palmer or any others. And the investment, and we have got a great reputation, as you know, in the past, Councillor Lovelock, Councillor Page, of having some of the best play facilities for young people in the country at one stage. And we will get back there with this for a new generation of young people, children in Prospect Park. So the residents and young people in my area will very much welcome this, so onwards we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, I'm sure we'll all support this. I had two concerns about the siting of the play area. The first was whether the trees, which are perhaps slightly further away from this area, would provide any shade. And I know that 2 trees are going and 2 are to be replaced. So I guess it might just be a little plea to the team when they're thinking about where replacement trees go, maybe think about shade, especially after the last few days we've had. And I've got a 6-year-old, and I really need somewhere to hide under a tree when a child is running around. And my second one was, there's very clear archaeological lines in this area on the aerial photography that even Google Maps, I think there are other map providers you can see on, provided that none of the equipment is digging down deep into that. I think actually the laying of a play area will probably protect that archaeology underneath. And there's been a response from Berkshire Archaeology, I think, saying that they don't have any concerns. But I just wanted to check that there won't be any deep foundations dug to centre this equipment in, is my assumption, and I think that's probably true, but maybe we could just briefly check. Thank you very much.
Could we get a response to that last point, Claire?
Yeah, the parks team, the applicant, did advise that there was no significant excavation, but we could request additional information maybe once we know what equipment they are proposing to install. And we've got a materials condition anyway, so maybe it might be reasonable to include what works would be involved in that as well.
Right, Councillor Ennis, you were presumably proposing that we accept, and I'd be happy. We always think in Norcott that actually Prospect Park is in fact in Norcott because our residents are nearer than your residents, but no, it's a well used. It's well used by the whole of West Reading and wider, in fact. So this is very, very welcome. And I know it's been people, local people are really, in particular, really, really pleased about this, and indeed the next application to come on the other developments in the parks. It's created a lot of interest. So I'm very happy to second you. Can we see all those in favour of this?
Chair, for both applications, Chair.
Sorry?
For both applications.
Yeah. And with the exception, of course, of Councillor Stamford Beale and Councillor Rowland. So yeah, all those in favour? Thank you very much. And then we get finally to the last item, which is Beverley Road in Tilehurst, page 419. Thank you.
Nothing to add to the report.
Okay, anybody got anything? No, thank you. Can we all agree that? Oh, I propose. Seconded. Thank you very much, and thank you all for getting it. It's only 10:15, so. Yeah. Yeah.